Welcome in here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Carlene is here in the producer chair. How are you doing,
Nick.
Carlene? How are you doing?
I'm good.
I got a chance to go outside for a little bit.
Cold.
It's cold. It fooled me because the sun is out.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to feel great. And
Don't
then I had to zip up the jacket a little bit. All the way up to
I'm
the top
over
of my neck. I know you are, but it's going to be 80 degrees.
It's going to be 80 degrees soon.
We'll talk about the weather later. We'll get on that tangent later. But we got a special guest here in studio. So I'm going to do I'm going to have him rate this intro. Because I've been doing these intros lately. I want him to rate this intro. It's a lot of pressure because we got a special guest. A Baltimore native, a Wake Forest Hall of Famer, a North Carolina Sports Hall of Famer, a beloved former Charlotte Hornet. Helped lead the Hornets to their first ever playoff appearance in the early 90s. He worked in real estate, advertising, broadcasting. He was also the head coach of the Charlotte Sting, the WNBA team.
Shout out.
Shout out to them. More importantly, he has assisted thousands of folks and families with his foundation by addressing food insecurity, access to education, and workforce development. And he's here to talk about, we're talking about it all, from heart health to the NCAA tournament to the Hornets. I'm talking about Mr. Muggsy Bogues. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Now you got to rank the intro. How was the intro?
Hey, you did good.
Okay.
It cost me quite a bit, but you did good.
How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm blessed to be here with you guys.
I was telling Muggsy as he was walking in, I said, man, what size is that jacket, man? I'm like, man, I wear large. I mean, did you see the jacket?
I love the jacket.
Like, okay, I was about to say. I'm
you
like,
got
all right.
704.
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Let's start with heart health, man. I guess when you think about, a guy like yourself and these athletes, man, you guys are in tip-top shape. You don't really think of, as a viewer, as a fan, you're like, man, these guys are in shape. Well, heart health, they're good. When did that start? I know as an NBA player, as a professional athlete, I mean, you're constantly being checked by doctors, but when did that sort of come into play for you, thinking about your heart health?
Well, it always been in the play, back of your mind.
Yeah.
Always been, a thought process, but never really went through it until I retired. Even though you get your daily physicals and so forth, but I never really had a cardiovascular heart scan. But so I was interested. I want to find out what was going on. And crazy that I'm saying is that I was recommended by the former owner of the Hornets, Mr. George Shen, who introduced me to HeartFlow. And when I, realized what the company HeartFlow stood for, and they partnered with Game Film in terms of providing insight information to retired athletes to find out what's all going on inside, with your heart. And it's been amazing since I, joined and since I did the study and joined those guys, and just to find out what's going on. And I'm so thankful I did it. Because we'd never know what's happening inside. As you alluded to, being in tip-top shape, doing all the great things in terms of being the best professional athlete or athlete that you possibly can be, eating healthy, exercising right, but not knowing exactly what's going on around your heart. I think now they did a study where it starts at the age of 30, to where you need to be aware of that, how much plaque there possibly could be, generating around your heart. So when I had the opportunity to go through that study, and actually I got my wife to go through it as well. But it's been an eye-opener. It's been something that I've been, really advocating about because of some of my friends that I've lost, and basically could have been not knowing it could have been prevented. So I just want to be, spread the word as much as I possibly can, for us to check on our health. It's not just athletes. We have, and even in our community, we have a lot of underlying issues that goes along. So you got to make sure that, you find out what's all happening. And I think, it all starts with, checking your cholesterol and all that sort of stuff that give you that sign to knowing that this is something that we need to really, invest in, to really check on what's actually going inside with your heart.
And as you were talking about, as men, as black men, I mean, we stubborn about going to. I think it's changing a lot.
It is.
But historically, we've been stubborn because we've been scared to go to the doctor. You're scared of the unknown.
The unknown. That's right.
I guess for you, and you talked about your wife being a part of HeartFlow. Can you walk us through like what exactly HeartFlow is and what you guys have to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's Heart Flow. You know, it's AI.
Yeah.
It's a non-intensive type of study that's been done on it. It's a scan, basically looking inside what's going on with the arteries, and being able to see exactly the type of plaque, volume that's inside, and it gives you that indication. It gives you that detailed insight to really knowing the volume that you have inside with your heart. And it's a diagram, you know. We visualize. It's a comprehensive assessment, a comprehensive assessment, I should say, in terms of actually finding out exactly what's going on inside of you. So, I'm so concerned, and I'm always, you know, concerned about my loved ones, and I want to make sure that, you know, for me personally, that I'm here for a long time. And a lot of us just don't want to know. You know, we just, as you said, we're afraid to know what's actually going on, but knowing, because you got so many people that cares for you. And not only that, it's good for your physician, you know, clinical as well, to know what type of, you know, risk you are, if you're high risk or you're low risk. So that information is always, you know, vital. And for me, personally, I just wanted to know what was all going on inside, because I know a lot of folks that rely on me, and I want to be here for a long time.
Oh man, we want you to be here for a long time, and we want to have you in here at 99 years old doing an interview.
Yeah. and the good thing about it is, you know, I know we're talking about retired athletes and a lot of athletes about being an athlete, but it's for everyone. You know, I mean, it's been a study that you need to age 30 years old, and that really just been detected. So it's be a good opportunity to really just find out, because you check with your insurance, quite sure it's covered through that, just to know what's all going on inside your arteries, because as we said, even an athlete as well as just an individual, you just don't know how much plaque that you create inside your heart.
Yeah, my father passed away from a massive heart attack when I was 7. And so I think about it, and, you know, old school guy, did not want to go to the doctor, but I think about it, you know, if you prioritize, and for me, you know, I got a physical next week. And so it's just me prioritizing my health, and I feel like that's just a great message to get out, especially young men, right? Because you think in your 20s, your 30s, and you're like, man, I'm invincible. Nothing can.
But that's how we think.
Yeah.
And that's just the, you know, the nature of it, that we feel good. You don't, you know, have no type of symptoms or anything. But again, it could be hereditary. You never know what's going on in your family, as you know, as some of us don't do that type of study and find out exactly what happened from generation to generation. But when you do have that understanding and have that information, it can be so helpful. I mean, it can put you at ease just knowing. And this test can give you that type of visual. It can give you that type of, detailed insight that actually what's going on inside.
Let's switch gears. You want to talk about some basketball?
Oh, we can talk about whatever. Come on,
man. You know, hey, can I?
Bring it in.
But but we had to get the most important thing out of the way.
Oh, for sure. Yes,
talking about health, because we want everybody to be here for quite some time, and the only way we know is knowing what's going on inside. And I don't like being a crapshooter, just walking around not knowing. I think we all afraid to know, but we do need to know, so we can all take advantage of Heart Flow, what they all stands for. And if you need any information, you go to heartflow.com/Muggsy. So that is heartflow.com/Muggsy. You can find out all the information.
And know your numbers too. Know your numbers. Know your numbers. That's that's an important part.
Absolutely.
Eugene, man, I see you over there. You can't hide. Come on, Eugene. Come on. Pull up a seat, Eugene.
Come on in.
Pull up a seat, Eugene. We're talking basketball.
Yeah, you go right here. Absolutely, you can.
What up, homie?
What's up, man?
Eugene Robinson here in the building. I called Eugene.
Yeah.
He ain't answered. So I thought, I didn't text
We
him
thought
back.
you were too busy for
Well,
us.
I was supposed to be here Monday.
Let's talk about basketball. Y'all ready to talk about some basketball? What y'all want to start with? NCAA tournament, or y'all want to do Hornets first?
Hey, that's the most exciting time of the year, with all the enthusiasm taking place around the country. So, you don't get that from the NBA. It's only through college where you have that type of enthusiasm about the sport of the game of basketball.
I got my bracket up. Did you fill out your bracket, Eugene?
Of course I did. Man.
Okay.
I filled out 4 brackets, man. I do 4 brackets. I do 2 of the men's side, 2 of the women's side.
Okay.
Yeah, and I always do 4 brackets.
Well, who's your sleeper? Who's the Cinderella, I should say? And who's just the obvious? You think, all right, man, this team is gonna walk through it.
Well, I think people need to watch out about Arkansas.
I've been saying the same
Arkansas
thing.
It's mainly because of the players that they have. Of course, coaches is one of the main reasons, but Darius A. Cup is something special. And when you got guard play like that, it always come down to guard play in the tournament. And he's one of the best, if not the best, point guard that's in the country. So I'm always worried about players and teams with a great coach like that. So that's one of my sleepers. I got Houston as well. You know, Houston, Coach Sampson, he's been there.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's been knocking on that door. And, you know, even though I had Duke all the way up to the Final Four, and that's hard for me to pick Duke. You know,
that's an
being
ACC
a Wake
guy.
Forest guy. Yeah, it's hard for me to pick Duke, but I think their injury is going to derail them a little bit. And I think Houston is going to come out of there, and I think Arizona could be that other team on the other side, to where you looking at, even though Michigan is really, you know, something strong, as well as Arizona, but I think Arizona and Houston will be the two fighting for the seal, the last team standing. And I got Coach Sampson being that guy holding up that trophy.
See, I think, I really think that St. John's, nobody's talking about St. John's.
St.
St. John's.
Coach Pitino.
They are very, very good. They end up in the Big East tournament. They end up beating the crap out of UConn. They dropped like 25 on them. And so I think people may be sleeping on them. But I think as you look at that tournament, I don't know. There's something about Arizona that I just think is their front quarters. They're good. They're good. They're big. They're good. And so they can put work in it. And I think the fact that maybe Duke's front court, I mean, the biggest player is 6'9", which is Boozer.
Yeah.
They're on the boards, but I think you get them 7-footers on the board. They just control the boards. Then it comes out to guard play, who's going to be able to dish the rock and find an open person.
What's working against Duke is historically a young team. Young teams don't win the tournament. Historically, it's usually those older teams, those teams that kind of been through it. But man, I mean, I look at BYU. That's my sort of my super team.
Yeah.
You got the number 1 draft pick essentially on the court. Possibly. He's looking like it, and he could look. He could solidify his place as a number 1 draft pick, just how he plays in this tournament. But I like BYU and I like Miami. Miami's a, whew.
Yeah.
It's unpredictable. It's so unpredictable. And that's what I love about March Madness. It's unpredictable.
Yes.
You just don't know. You don't know, and you have to go ahead and buy your popcorn and peanuts and watch the game. That's what I love about it.
That's so true. And, you know, it's something about Miami. I think that, you know, they had that run last year. I think this year the guard play is good.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but it's not as quite what it was last year. You know, Clayton was something special. And, you know, their play now, I like the guards, but I just think they're going to run up to this wall during, you know, the Elite Eight.
I was kind of going down a rabbit hole yesterday of like moments, especially here in the area, you know, Charlotte, Greensboro. You know, we host a lot of NCAA tournaments, and I went, you know, I thought about the 1994 here in Charlotte, Arkansas. They beat Duke in the Final Four. As a great moment. Nolan Richardson winning that chip. For y'all, do y'all remember any moments that stick out? And then also I'm thinking about Tyrus Thomas and Big Baby Davis back in the day.
Todd Day. Oh, you talking about that team? Or?
Yeah, that team back in the day. I forgot what year. I don't think they I can't remember.
I think it was Todd Day and Mayberry, those guys.
Okay.
That won it for Coach Richardson. And I mean, again, it's guard play.
Yeah.
They had tremendous guard play during that time. And, you know.
And Corliss Williamson,
And Corliss was us one of them. But that guard play really solidified them being able to be that last team. I think Todd Day had an unbelievable NBA series, NCAA run, as well as Mayberry.
Mosey, can you highlight what you mean by guard play for those who may not know?
Well, guard play meaning that, you know, they're very creative, you know, and IQ level's high. They can score the basketball. They play both ends of the ball. but they more steady. They experience. They don't rattle during the moments. It's all about the moments. And when you look at the guard play, and I look at these guards today, and when I mentioned Acuff, Darius, he's so steady. He's really steady. And you did mention St. John. I love what Coach Patino is doing up there. I mean, he got those guys playing at a very high level. I mean, UConn wasn't even, and we know what UConn stand for and how they able to compete night in and night out. Coach Miller had them guys always at the top, but St. John really just derailed them and showed them something I didn't think it was possible. And it was during a big moment. That Big East tournament. So for them to be able to accomplish that and the way they was able to play, I think the momentum, going into this tournament is going to be huge for them.
Let's talk about some Hornets. The Hornets, man. From what you've been seeing, and you talk about guard play, they're getting tremendous guard play. What has been the biggest turning point for them? Because it's like every season they go in there with some expectation, and then it hasn't been great, and then all of a sudden it seems like, all right. I say all of a sudden, but it's been a work in progress. I mean, they've been hot. They are looking like a dominant team right now. Like they're fighting, they're clawing for that play-in right now to make the postseason. But what sticks out to you when you see the young Hornets team on the court?
Well, for one, they healthy. And, they got that core that became healthy. With Melo, Brandon Miller, Miles, Knipple, and Moose, and Grant. Came back. So with them guys were being healthy, they start to really, understand what they are all about. And the key player has been Melo. Melo bought in. He understood. I think he really started to understand what he had around him, and trusting the guys. And his play elevated their play. And you could see it all forming, all coming together. Each win kept building up, confidence. Guys are now playing to their strength. A guy like Con Knipple now, who could just play freely, because of the spacing what Melo brings night in and night out. They got to worry about a guy like that, and he's trusting in his team. He's sharing the basketball. He's really, been an extension of the coach, and you can really see the growth of him. And a lot of folks say, well, what's the difference? Well, it may be because he didn't have those type of pieces around him early on in his career. And him had to play a certain way. Now that he see what he has and what's available to him, for me, as what I'm looking, what I see, his whole mindset had changed. His whole play has changed. You can look at and see the movement and how he out there and the way he approaches the game. So for me, that's what I see.
I mean, the knock on Melo was, he wasn't a winner. And it seemed
he was hurt.
He was hurt too. He stays hurt. He's not a winner. There was a lot of talk about him being traded, getting Miles Bridges out of there as well. But the Hornets were like, all right, we're gonna keep this young core together. Like how and Eugene, as an athlete, you can speak to this as well. Why is that important to keep a young team and just together and not just trade off the pieces like we see a lot of times?
And when you have core pieces and guys who need to play together, you don't want to separate that. You always want to go with a good core. You always add stuff, but you got to have your core people. You got to have a point guard. You got to have somebody who can dish the rock. And who's unselfish. And I think that when I watch the Hornets, I'm excited for what they can become. I watched that game when the Spurs came here, and it was during a snowstorm or something. And man, the Hornets just went through them.
Yeah.
I mean, like they passed the ball around. Miller was on fire. He had like 29 points. They were just on fire, but they all had their own roles. I'm like, man, these guys, if they play together for a while, you better watch out. They're going to be dangerous because nobody's even talking about them. And they know what they have. And so I'm like Charles Barkley. I agree. I'm like, hey, you better watch out. I think the Hornets are going to make the playoffs, man. I really believe they're going to go ahead and make the playoffs because I think they've been playing some really cohesive ball. And I think another thing that he maybe not say it, but I think that Knipple, the way he's been playing, I think he wants to outplay his counterpart in Cooper Flag.
Oh, for sure.
You know, there's something about that. You know, that guy is supposed to be the guy, and you go like this. Well, I'm letting everybody know I'm the dude. I'm that cat. You know, and I think that maybe deep down inside, without nobody knowing, I think you're like, hey, you better recognize I'm that dude.
I think he raised the level inside the locker room. I think Melo and them, they saw it like this.
Dude,
kid
he
is
raised the
balling.
level.
Yeah, and you got to give credit to Khan as well as Sion, and you know the culture has changed. But I think you know Khan is allowed to play the way he's played because of a guy like Melo. He created the space, and he allows you know Khan to be himself, and Khan don't have to be no one else besides himself. And that's a credit to the team as well and to the players. You know, they complementary to one another. You look at what they all do. Moose, do all the tangible things. On the rebounds, keeping balls alive, second opportunities. Melo, again, trusting his teammates, creating space for them, where now he don't have to think that I got to score just to be that player, even though he's scoring at a high clip, but he also distributing the basketball, and the ball is moving around. It's not standing in one place, and you have no isolation. And these guys are really trusting in one another. And you got to give a lot of credit to the coaching staff, you know, because they're able to understand what they have, and they've been patient enough to not panic enough to where they felt like they need to make a move during the deadline, and they kept everybody, and just to see what we have and what it can possibly be. And now we see what it can possibly be, and I think, you know, again, coaching staff having that understanding, having that, you know, that insight of who these players are and what they're capable of being, and giving them an opportunity to be it, is coming to a fruition.
During your playing days, does it remind you of any of the teams that you were on when you talk about Knipple, LaMelo, you talk about the different pieces? Does that remind you of anything that you've experienced?
Absolutely. It happened during our run as well. You know, adding pieces, adding the right pieces, I would say. When we got start off, we got LJ, then we got Alonzo. You know, those are the two main pieces that we was missing. Of course, then we had Hershey Hawkins, Johnny Newman, Scott Burrell, all those other little intangible pieces that made who we were. And that's what you can see with these Hornets, what this new regime is doing. They giving these guys an identity in terms of letting them play towards their strength. And when you have a point guard that has that understanding, who's been, you know, at the highs of his game before, but not knowing exactly how he was getting there. But I think the growth of him, the maturity of him, he understands where his position is now, and he's leading the team in the right way.
I'm excited about the Hornets, man. I'm a diehard Panthers fan. Grew up about an hour away from Charlotte, so I'm excited about the Hornets. That would be something. The Hornets. Come on, man, Eugene. Yeah. Panthers made the playoffs. Hornets made the playoffs.
Don't sleep on the Hornets, man. I'm just saying, don't sleep on these guys, man. They got it going on. I'm down with Charles Barkley on this one.
Absolutely.
I lost 25 pounds, 35 pounds, and I'm down with Charles Barkley. There you go. I'll holler at your boy, Charles.
Guaranteed.
That's right. Guaranteed. Yeah. They're really good.
Oh, man, Eugene Muggsy, thank you for stopping by. One more time for folks about HeartFlow. Where can they find more information?
Well, you can find HeartFlow. You can go to heartflow.com/Muggsy. That is heartflow.com/Muggsy. You can find all the information about what the capabilities of HeartFlow and what game film is all about.
Man, all right, so you got your health information, you got your sports news, you got everything from Muggsy. It's time for Muggsy to go. We're going to have to start putting him on payroll if we ask him.
Payroll.
Oh, I like that.
And on that note, I'm just Muggsy, thank you for your time, man. Thank you, Eugene. Thank you for stopping by. Let's head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
I just came by just to say what's up, man. I didn't know I was going to go ahead and just...
Hey.
Oh man, great conversation there with Muggsy Bogues. Eugene Robinson also stopping by. That was a good surprise. I called Eugene.
Always a treat.
I called Eugene before the interview.
You did?
And he came through. Let me see if he called me back or he just knew.
No.
I think he just knew.
He probably came in. He was flying blind. He came in here. That's what he does.
He did. He flew blind. But
just came in.
that was great. Let's go to weather. We'll be back in a few minutes with more. We got distracted a bit, but here's a full forecast.
Another gorgeous day today across the Carolinas, but boy, it is cold out there. Hey, I'm meteorologist Majestic Storm. Not even a single cloud in the sky as we're looking towards Lake Norman. It was cold this morning with a mix of upper 20s, low to mid 30s. And now as we're heading into the afternoon, bottom line, we're just not warming up a whole lot, with the daytime highs only climbing really into the upper 40s today. Good news tomorrow, we're back into the low 60s. And if you like warmer weather, you will love this weekend's weather forecast. We're talking about 80-degree temperatures. Now the normal for this time of the year, it's 65 degrees, and today we're pretty far away from that. 49 is where we'll top off this afternoon, and we started out the day with picture perfect blue sunny skies. Many of us still seeing that this afternoon, but I'd say after dinner time and overnight tonight, you'll start to notice a little bit more cloud coverage push across the Carolinas. In the mountains, it's been a really pretty day. Temperatures also chilly though. 38 degrees there in Banner Elk and Blowing Rock, 40 degrees there in Boone. We're nice and dry across the foothills today with plenty of sunshine from Taylorsville to Hickory, 48 degrees there and 49 in Maiden. Looking across the Queen City, 49 will be our high this afternoon, much of the same back towards Gastonia. And if you want to do any errands, you want to do something outside, you may just want to keep the coat handy because again, temperatures were cold this morning and we're not warming up a whole lot even as we head on into the later half of the day. 52 degrees there in Chesterfield. Satellite and radar looks like this across the Carolinas. Not much to worry about. It's going to be a quiet day overall. Little cloud coverage filtering in as we head towards the later half of our Tuesday or our Wednesday, but as we're heading into the next several days, you'll see those rain chances are going to stay dry. We don't have rain chances until next week. So instead of rain, the big weather story is we get sunshine, we have warmer temperatures, and eventually it's going to feel like spring just in time for the very first day of spring. Let's take you into our futurecast. Here's 9 o'clock tonight. I wanted to pause it here because at this point we have a lot of cloud coverage out there. Increasing clouds, and then temperatures tomorrow morning will start out mainly into the 30s, and you can see much the same. Overall, just a nice mix of sun and clouds for our Thursday afternoon with those southwesterly winds starting to pick up. A little bit breezy with some of those winds gusting up to around 25 miles an hour, but thankfully it's moving in from the southwest. That's why those temperatures will be warm into the mid-60s. Friday morning, beautiful blue sunny skies, 30s and low 40s heading out the door, and then there you go, those 70-degree temperatures. I think Friday is going to be absolutely perfect. Getting even warmer Saturday and Sunday with those 80s returning. Starting to see those temperatures drop by Tuesday though with mid-50s. Again, tomorrow morning will be our last cold morning, and then as we're wrapping up the work week and heading into the weekend, those overnight lows will become a little bit more steady. There's that jet stream indicating that push to the north will allow warmer air to filter in just in time for Friday. Remember, Friday, sunny skies with temperatures into the 70s. Makes sense because Friday is going to be the first day of spring, officially starting at 10:46. Weekend weather forecast looks like this. Isn't that nice? Low 80-degree temperatures on Saturday, and you can see right here in our Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast that this is our overall trend, getting warmer each day, and each day we're dry with a good mix of sun and clouds. Friday, absolutely stunning for the first day of spring with 73-degree temperatures for our highs, and then Monday almost 90 degrees. Early next week, a little bit more cloud coverage, some rain chances returning, but I think by Tuesday you'll feel that difference with those mid-50s. Hope you have a great day.
87 degrees on Sunday. I feel like it keeps getting hotter. They keep forecasting it to be. You like it?
You know me. I like splish splash weather.
Are you gonna be at the pool Sunday?
No, I'm not gonna be on the pool
okay.
Sunday,
Just
but I like to
gotta
be out in
ask.
the sunshine. I like 80 degrees.
I wouldn't be mad if you said you went to the pool on Sunday. It's going to be 87 degrees.
No, I'm not ready for all that.
You're not ready. Okay, all right. She's not ready for
Soon,
that. It's
but not
March.
yet.
She's not ready for it. Okay. All right. So there are going to be people enjoying the weather on Sunday this weekend. And they're probably going to be out and about. They're probably going to be at the bars. They're going to probably doing something where, it's, outside. Or maybe there's a big screen outside. Or maybe they're barbecuing or cooking out outside. I say the TV because March Madness is underway. The first 4 playing games were last night. Sorry, NC State fans.
Sorry.
But we got some good games coming up.
Yeah.
We got some good games. And we got some local teams.
Sure do.
Or a local team. I'm say local teams because my High Point University.
Yeah, it's local
Panthers,
enough. I think you can
local
count
enough.
it. We can count that.
Let's count High Point University. But Queens University,
Queens is right here.
the Royals,
That's right.
they are playing in their first round matchup Friday, 7:35 p.m. I'm looking at the time. They're playing.
Historic.
This is pretty historic. This is a pretty big deal. They're playing against Purdue, a really good team, Purdue, number 2 seed. In St. Louis, Missouri. Anything can happen in the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
Anything, in the words of Kevin Garnett, anything is possible. And they had a big celebration, a big send-off. And that's where Walker Lawson was this morning. How are you doing, Walker?
I'm great. It was such a big send-off that I came in singing through the studio.
That's who you probably heard when you got distracted. It was Walker. We were like, what's going on?
He was just
Walker,
hyped for the Royals.
You know,
It's fine.
he was hype. I
mean,
understand.
I'm tired, and it's a good story. It's a great day to be out there. Big moment. So, yeah, of course, it's a big moment for Queens. One of the really cool parts about being out there was there was this girl that was actually a former Queens volleyball player, so alumni, and then she brought her students from the school next door, a bunch of 5th graders, and she viewed this as an opportunity. You can actually see we have some footage now of the team going out to the bus, but there were a lot of students out there, but also getting to see a alumni be there to bring her own students there as well. Now that she's a teacher next door was really awesome to see because she said for her it's bigger than basketball. She was able to bring her students and show them what's possible. They can be athletes, they can be successful athletes and successful students. So she said it was a really good opportunity for her to look in her past, but also to look in the future eyes of kids before her that she teaches every single day.
Oh man, it's a big deal. It's one of those things like when you go to a small school, and I went to a small school, and we've been close to making a tournament, and obviously I'm not years removed from being in college, but I can just imagine how it feels on campus where it's like everybody's excited and like whoa, like we could be a Cinderella team. We could end up playing multiple games. Well, just playing one game.
Yeah,
is good.
Even
enough.
the one game getting to make it, like
right.
it's exciting for them. And a lot of the students, of course, were excited that still go to Queens. Planning watch parties, of course. The big watch party is at Suffolk Punch in South Park.
Okay.
Of course, that's the one that the school has kind of directed us to. So that is, as you know, Friday at 7:35 p.m. So you'll see a lot of excitement from students, and it was cool to get to see some alumni there that were bringing in students of their own.
Oh, look, you're a UNC Charlotte alum. So
Yeah,
like,
I
if
am.
UNC Charlotte was in the tournament, you would probably
I'd be excited.
You would be at the celebration. Would
Of
you
course.
be at the send-off?
Yeah.
You'd probably be covering the send-off.
Yeah, I probably would be covering the send off. I was like, I don't know if I'd be there. Be there for work. Most of my time there was during COVID, so it was a little bit different. But it would be an exciting time, of course. Anytime you get to see a big school or your school get that recognition, it's always exciting to rep it. So
When can folks catch your story tonight?
4:30.
Early. Okay.
I'm
this
early. I'm
afternoon.
with you today.
All right, cool. 4:30. We'll take it.
We're in the house early today.
Walker Lawson, singing Walker Lawson.
Yes, that's my other career.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us here. Thank you for stopping by. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. We are now getting an update on the measles outbreak in South Carolina happening right now. The Department of Public Health holding a virtual press conference that they've normally done in recent weeks and recent months. Let's take a listen into what Department of Health leaders there in South Carolina are saying.
And Anamona, you might be muted. I'm not hearing anything. Okay, still not hearing anything. If you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we can read it out loud there. Allison?
So it looks like spring break is scheduled up in the Spartanburg area for the early part of April, but across the country, there's a lot of travel going on right now. You've spoken in the past about your concern about travel. Is there anything else? I mean, what is the level of the concern in South Carolina about this busy travel season and what it may mean for the really low numbers that the outbreak has had in recent weeks?
Well, we continue to be concerned about anybody who is still susceptible to measles. And because spring break is upon us, what we encourage people to understand is that it takes the body about 2 weeks to develop full immunity after vaccination. And if they're just receiving the first dose, that still gives very good protection. But we do want to let people know that travel, airline flights, anywhere where there are crowds of people that are in shared spaces, you may find a lot more people who are susceptible, and you can find people who are infected with the measles virus. So we continue to encourage people to consider getting vaccinated now. People may be visiting tourist attractions and things like that increases the level of contact with large numbers of people. So anything like that increases the risk. The more people that you're exposed to, and if we're looking at lower than desired vaccination coverage in many places in this country now and in places here in South Carolina, this is really the time for people to consider getting vaccinated as soon as possible, because we're encouraged by the declining numbers, but at the same time, we're aware that we still have a number of people who remain at risk, and the potential for this to cause our cases here to increase again. And we just hope that that will not be the case if people can take protective measures now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Bell. And Baker?
With the small number of people who are currently in quarantine, I believe it was only 8, and then that ending on April the 2nd, I know that you still look for a few more weeks after that without infections, but is there a chance that the outbreak could effectively be over before spring break actually starts here? And then the other question that I have is more on a personal kind of angle. I know y'all aren't taking victory laps yet, but you know, I would be interested in a sense, the sense of looking ahead to it possibly being over, and you know, any sense of relief that your team might be beginning to feel, because I imagine it's been quite a wild few months.
We are not letting our guard down. It is too early to say that we will not see any more cases. And you did mention that we will continue to monitor these cases, that we cannot declare that this outbreak is over until 2 incubation periods after the last case. And so it's really important now that we want to actually heighten our surveillance for febrile rash illnesses. We want to encourage providers to really have a low index of suspicion of any measles cases, because that gives us the opportunity to immediately place people in isolation, to place their contacts in quarantine if necessary, because we have the most success with disease containment when we have the smallest number of cases. If we let our guard down too early, then we just put ourselves in the position of allowing more disease to spread if we are not paying careful attention. We know that there are other causes of febrile rash illnesses, so we want healthcare providers to have a very low index of suspicion of reporting suspect cases to us, so that we may rule them out. They may entirely be something else, other causes of rash illnesses, but it is vital that we learn of all of these cases. This is enhanced surveillance that we must do before we can declare this outbreak over. So it is far too early for us to let our guard down. We will see what happens after spring break. And when we have, our numbers are low now. If they remain low, and then when we get to zero, and that's when we'll start the clock, and we'll watch that for 42 days out and hope that we will, as soon as possible, declare this outbreak over. But we will remain vigilant until that occurs.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Anna Mona?
Yeah, hi, Casey. I think she answered my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. And I am not seeing any other hands. So I think we will call this the end. We appreciate everyone for attending today's briefing. As always, if you have questions after the briefing, you're welcome to reach out to us at media@dph.sc.gov, and we'll be happy to answer your questions there. Dr. Bell, thank you so much for your time, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so that press conference there, that virtual press conference from Columbia, South Carolina, from the South Carolina Department of Public Health, updating us on that measles outbreak there in South Carolina. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. So moments ago, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department hosted a press conference for a presentation of Quick Trip's donation to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Foundation. Again, this just wrapped up just moments ago, but we want to play it back for you. Let's take a listen now.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before we get started, we have a couple of guest speakers. I'll go ahead and give you their names and give you the spelling for their names. First one is Nick Gracek with Quick Trip, Gracek. And our second one is Katrina Collins, Katrina Collins. And of course, Chief Estella D. Patterson will speak as well. Well, good afternoon. My name is Brad Koch, and I serve as the patrol major over the Northeast Service Area and work closely with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Foundation. Thank you all for being here today. We appreciate your time and your commitment to supporting public safety in the city of Charlotte. This is an important moment for our department and for our community, and we're grateful to share it with all of you. We're especially thankful for the strong partnerships that help us move our mission forward, and today's announcement reflects just how powerful those partnerships can be. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Nick Gracek, Division Sales Manager with Quick Trip, whose leadership and generosity have played a key role in making today's contribution possible. Nick, thank you for being here today. Thank you for your continued support of CMPD and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Foundation. Nick.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here with you guys today. See, he's already introduced me. My name is Nick Gracek, and I'm here on the behalf of our 550 Quick Trip employees who work in our 21 stores here in Charlotte. I'd like to thank everyone for being here today, especially Chief Patterson and all the brave men and women of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. At Quick Trip, the safety of our employees and our customers is our highest priority. We're incredibly grateful for the officers who put their lives on the line every day to protect our community, and we're committed to supporting them with the resources they need to do their job, go home safe to their families, and come back and do it all over again. Today, we're proud to announce a $500,000 donation from Quick Trip to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Foundation. Since Quick Trip was founded in 1958, we've invested 5% of our net profits back into the communities we serve. The contribution to the Police Foundation will help our officers leverage new ways to keep Charlotte safe, increase employee health and wellness, and make sure that we recruit and retain the best officers in the country. Again, on behalf of all of us here at Quick Trip, thank you again to Chief Patterson and the men and women of CMPD who keep us safe. It's an honor to be here and to support you. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to introduce Katrina from the CMPD Foundation.
Good morning, everyone. I may look familiar to some of you. It's good to be back with you. My name is Katrina Collins. I'm with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Foundation, and with me today I have several of our board members. Nick Gracek is on our board, Scott Harris, Chuck Hood, and Glenn Mowry. And we are just really happy to be here today to receive this donation from Quick Trip. You may not know about the foundation. We are a nonprofit organization that was created in 2004. And we have a volunteer board. As I mentioned, some of them are here with us today. And we raise money to support initiatives of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department that aren't funded in their annual budget funded by the city. Our funding focus is crime fighting equipment and technology, training and education, community building and outreach, recruitment and retention, and employee health, safety, and wellness. So Quick Trip has been a supporter of the foundation since 2020, if my records are right. And this is their largest one-time donation to us. And the donation will help us support additional initiatives that are brought to us by the department to the board. So I just want to say thank you so much to Nick, you for serving on our board, for all of you that are here today, and for Quick Trip for this really tremendous donation. And I also want to thank the individuals, organizations, and businesses in our community who support the Police Foundation. They allow us to continue our mission of providing CMPD with resources to impact crime, to build trust in the community, to recruit and retain the best employees, and to keep CMPD employees in our community safe. Thank you very much. And I think I'll turn it over to Chief Estella Patterson.
Thank you, Katrina, and thank you all for being here today for this very special and important moment. To Nick and his team, thank you so much. We are so indebted to you for your generosity, and also to our Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Foundation Board, our members who are here. Thank you for being here and supporting the work that we do. And then members of my team who are here as well. We are truly grateful at this donation. So today's announcement and check presentation is an important moment for our department and for our community, and I'm proud to stand here alongside our partners who share our commitment to building a safer and stronger Charlotte. Today we are honored to recognize Quick Trip for their extraordinary act of generosity. Their $500,000 donation to the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Foundation is a powerful investment in public safety and in the well-being of the people that we serve. I asked Nick, I said, I can't wait to see this check, this big check that you have for us. This contribution truly strengthens the partnership between CMPD, the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Foundation, and the private sector, which is something that I believe in very strongly. It helps us move faster, innovate more boldly, and bring new tools and strategies to the front lines of public safety. Tools that would not be possible through public funding alone, and that's so important to emphasize. My budget can only go so far, so having these kind of partnerships really helps us out. Support like this allows us to enhance officer safety and effectiveness, and it helps us to continue building trust and collaboration with the community, which is also critical. In 2025 alone, thanks to the generosity of individuals and companies like Quick Trip, the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Foundation invested more than $1.6 million in CMPD initiatives that directly advance my 3 core principles, which you've heard me talk about, and they are reducing violent crime and disorder, enhancing community engagement and collaboration, and improving employee wellness and morale. To support our priority of reducing violent crime and disorder, the Foundation invested in advanced crime fighting tools such as our FUSES system, which is also known as Connect Charlotte. They also invested in in drones as first responders, investigative cameras, and they also invested in enhanced DNA technology, which really gives our employees the opportunity to move faster and more effectively in identifying offenders and to prevent violence. To strengthen community engagement and collaboration, the Foundation funded programs that build trust and connection, such as COPS, Cars, and Kids, and also they supported our summer college internship program to help recruit future police officers. And to improve employee wellness and morale, the Foundation helped make possible mental health care reimbursement for our employees, and they also supported appreciation efforts for our 911 call takers, our dispatchers, and every CMPD employee who works tirelessly behind the scenes. Quick Trip's donation today really allows us to continue moving and to expand programs that bring officers and residents together, and also to ensure employees have the tools that they need and the support they need to serve our community with excellence. So this is more than just a financial contribution, and I want Quick Trip to really understand this. This is really a statement of confidence in the work that we do every single day, and also for the future of our community. So on behalf of the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, I want to express my deep appreciation to Quick Trip and the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Foundation for their leadership and for their commitment to public safety. We are grateful of the partnerships, and we look forward to the impact that this investment will make in our community. And at this time, I will turn it back over to Major.
Thank you very much, Chief. Katrina, Nick, thank you very much for being here. Again, thank everyone who joined us today, and to all our partners who continue to invest in the safety and well-being of Charlotte. If you have any questions for any of our 3 speakers, you are invited to speak with them one-on-one. Thank you for coming, and have a great day.
And actually, if you guys want to stay where you're at, we're going to do the check presentation, and if you guys want to do that.
All right, let's head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. All right, let's head over to South Carolina, where South Carolina lawmakers are weighing more restrictions on hemp products. One option, ban them entirely. Julie Kay is here in studio covering all things politics. You're covering the story for us today, Julie. So you got the chance to speak with lawmakers and a pharmacist, right?
Yeah, just to get some context on what these restrictions would do. South Carolina's in a really interesting spot where they don't, at the state level, regulate THC products at all. Of course, there's still regulations through different counties, and of course, there's federal regulations on what's able to be sold in the U.S., but the state doesn't have any, and so they're kind of in this moment of, we need to get this done fast, because we've been pushing this off for a while. These products are gaining popularity. Specifically, the most discussed bill, both in general and on the Senate floor, is one that would focus specifically on THC-infused consumables like gummies, or you've seen those THC drinks all over North Carolina. Those are getting really popular, and some of them are getting sold in like grocery stores. And so that bill would, first of all, you'd have to prove you're 21 years old to purchase it. And then they would restrict some of the stronger ones to be sold at actually liquor stores as opposed to grocery stores. So it would limit where they're able to be sold, who's able to buy them. But another bill that's gained a little bit less traction, but is still a part of the conversation and a part of why this is kind of taking so long, is because there's disagreements about how far to go. Another bill would ban these products pretty much entirely across the state, which is a big jump to make. But of course, people are concerned then at that point about medical cannabis, medical marijuana. Of course, marijuana across the board is illegal in South Carolina, but THC and those kind of products for medical uses is kind of what I focused on, because any sort of restrictions, people get anxious about something that they use for pain management, as opposed to some really intense medicines. So I spoke with a pharmacist out of Rock Hill who sells some of these CBD THC products. Of course, he goes by federal regulations, and he of course also speaks with doctors that, the doctors of these patients, to make sure they're not prescribing anything that's going to conflict with these substances. But he said, I'm not opposed to regulation. I would like to see some protection for medical uses, because that it isn't in the law. There is nothing protecting medical usage right now. And so even if this more limited bill was to get passed, there's nothing in it to say that they couldn't go that far in the future.
Interesting conversation, because it's totally different in North Carolina. Obviously, we're covering two states here in our area. It's just yeah.
And who's to say someone's not going to drive over the border in Rock Hill and come by them here, because it's so close. Yeah. So there's that element of it too.
Or even if you live much further away. I mean, who would, there are folks who would drive 3 hours, 4 hours.
Yeah. People who rely on it for pain management, absolutely.
Yeah. Julie, when can folks catch the story tonight?
5 o'clock.
Covering all things politics. Julie K., thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Do you want to head to break, or should we do weather? Okay, let's head to break. Carlene said let's head to break. Let's head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. So earlier today, a big investment for Charlotte's historic West End, $2.24 million invested for community health, again, in Charlotte's historic West End. In case you missed it, let's take you now to to that announcement.
Good morning. You can do better than that. Good morning. Good morning. If you don't mind, just give me 1 second. All right. That's what I'm talking about. Yes. 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 Good morning. It is so good to be here, so good to see all of you. Before we get started, we always want to make sure we pay respect to where we are. So I do want to bring up Dr. Ricky Woods, Senior Minister of First Baptist Church West, to say a few words and welcome you to this beautiful sanctuary.
Thank you, Ralphine, and good morning to everyone, and welcome to First Baptist Church West. It is indeed an honor for us to be able to host this event because it is a vision that we had more than 30 years ago when we built this facility for it to be an anchor in our community. There was limited meeting space on the west side for venues such as this, and we're grateful to be able to host CVS, List, and other partners that are with us today and Caring. We're also ecstatic about the opportunity that we've had to use this space to do outreach in the community. Everything from providing mental health assistance that we provide through our partnership with Village Heartbeat, to after-school programs, to an aviation and drone camp that we operate, as well as our connections with Charlotte Symphony and the Junior Symphony that meets in this space. This space is busy 7 days a week, not just as a place of worship, teaching, and training, but a place of outreach to serve the citizens of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County and surrounding counties, and we're grateful to add your name to the list. So again, welcome and thank you for being with us today, and enjoy your time here.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. On behalf of my team at List Charlotte, I want to thank our partners, our national team, our residents for joining us to launch the Westside Wellness Collab. When you see me, you say I stand here. You all see me out and about, but I can never do this alone. The success of List Charlotte is about a team effort, and I have an amazing team that I am going to introduce to you right now. Let's start with Chandra Scroggins. Chandra, where are you? Yes. The project manager for this particular project is Dr. Heba Sala. Harold Lloyd is our senior program officer. Harold, where are you? Jordan Braswell is our program officer. Jordan. And last but most definitely not least, our deputy director, Rusty Mills. We're thankful to gather here, this team, my team and I have a seasoned team that has been with me 7 years, so I've not had turnover at List Charlotte, and if that says anything, when we started our office in 2019, one of the places that was very welcoming to us was First Baptist Church West. We had our Grassroots Advisory Committee meetings here in this church when we opened in March of 2019, so we're very grateful to the church, grateful for Dr. Woods for opening up the church so that we could be able to gather people in this community to be able to talk about what they want and what they need in this community. So let's give the church a hand. For those of you that are new to List Charlotte opened our doors in March of 2019, and when we came to Charlotte, we opened for two reasons. One was we were operationalizing a housing fund, a private housing fund called the Charlotte Housing Opportunity Investment Fund. But the second, and we've created over 2,400 units of affordable housing under that fund. But the second reason is our comprehensive community development approach. So while we work in housing, we also work in areas of small business, commercial development, lending, capacity building of our grassroots organizations. And we did that, and we've done that in the past 7 years this month to be exact. We've done that in the past 7 years, but particularly we had a target neighborhood in the area that you're in right now where this particular initiative is going to take place in historic West End. Through our work with the city, Knight Foundation, and most recently the successful ending, I guess you can say, of the Fifth Third Bank Neighborhood Investment Program, where we led a collaboration among 3 grassroots community organizations, we're proud of what we've accomplished and grateful for those early partnerships that pushed us to dig deeper into collaboration and prepare us to do this work, which is what leads us here today. The Westside Wellness Collab is an initiative that will address access to preventive health care. We're proud of the leadership of our community partners, Charlotte Community Services Association, Caring, and Deep Roots CPS Farm, who will help to expand access to fresh and healthy food, health care, and community-rooted services here in this neighborhood that has been historically underserved. We're grateful to CVS Health Foundation for your support in making this possible. Thank you. Today is an opportunity to recognize the power of collaboration. You're going to hear that word a lot today, but that is what this is about, collaboration. When nonprofit organizations, healthcare providers, and investment partners come together, we can build solutions that respond to the needs of the residents. And that is exactly what the Westside Wellness Collab is designed to do. We're grateful to everyone who has helped make this initiative possible, and we're excited to learn more about the impact it will have in the years to come. So to kick us off, we do want you to hear from lists nationally. So please join me in welcoming Tiffany Royster, who is our Program Vice President for the Southern Markets in Milwaukee at Local Initiative Support Corporation.
I brought a million things up here with me. I didn't think it through and leave some sitting on the chair. But good morning, everyone. Good morning. And I would like to say thank you to Ralphine for allowing me to come and be here. It's always a good day to be in Charlotte. I also want to acknowledge that Ralphine, she mentioned that the team hasn't had any turnover. So I managed the South and Milwaukee. But not only is this the longest tenured team in the South, this is the longest tenured team in the entire organization. And I think that speaks to the leadership that you have here, the commitment that the team has to the office, to the community. And so I'm happy every time I come to Charlotte and get to be around that. I think that inspiration rubs off. You guys probably met Don Deck when you came in. Don Deck is our executive director in upstate South Carolina. Ralphine so much talks about team that even her fellow executive directors are like, oh, Ralphine's having an event, we gotta be there. So thank you, Ralphine, for all you do. Congratulations on 7 years. Please stay, don't try to leave us. But now that I've gotten my shameless plea out of the way, you know, what I would like to say is LIST, right? We always say LIST, but Local Initiative Support Corporation. Because you think about that, the L, that's local, the initiative to support. And so all of what we're talking about today is really focused on that. So across the country, LIST partners with communities to strengthen neighborhoods, to support neighborhoods, so that families can thrive ultimately. And one thing we've learned is that healthy people and communities are shaped by many factors, not just one. So you have neighborhood conditions, including access to food, reliable health care, safe housing, supportive community services. All of that plays a critical role, all of those things. So when you look at how do you address the social determinants to health, you don't want to take one thing in isolation. You want to work on all the things together. And so that's why, as Ralphine said, we're going to talk about collaboration a lot, because you could go a moderate distance working on one thing, but to go far, you want to work on all the things together. You want to bring together the community development. You want to bring together the healthcare providers and the local organizations. And so that's what's so exciting about this partnership. Because with the West Side Wellness Collaborative, that's exactly, or collab, that's exactly what you have. By connecting not just community organizations, but trusted community organizations, the healthcare services and the food access, bringing it together as one. Everyone for the greater good, sacrificing, working together as a team to help the community and the residents, bringing fresh food and supporting the local networks. And so with that, I'll just say, under the leadership of Liz Charlotte and our fearless leader, Ralphine, and the team, in partnership with the Charlotte Community Services Association, Caring, very excited to see them again in their work, and the Deep Roots CPS Farm. This initiative builds on community strengths, demonstrates the power of coordinated efforts, and we're very grateful to the CPS Health Foundation investment, which makes it possible for these organizations to work together around a shared vision for a stronger neighborhood. And now, I get the pleasure of being able to introduce the next speaker, Mr. Mark Jarrell, Chair of the Mecklenburg County Board of County Commissions. I wanted to make sure I didn't forget the second county.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I know you guys are a little nervous, an elected official with a microphone, but I promise you I'm going to stay within my time limit. But I do want to bring you greetings on behalf of the 9-member Board of County Commissioners that represent the 1.2 million people here in Mecklenburg County. Certainly want to give honor to Dr. Woods and the First Baptist West Church family for just being an anchor in this community. And special shout out to my college classmate for her leadership, Rafine. We're just so proud of you, and just thank you and your team for all of your work. I am excited to be here. It's a real honor to join you today to celebrate the launch of the Westside Wellness Collab. And we all know that the initiative reflects the kind of partnership that's really so important for our neighborhoods. And at the county, if you don't know, we know that healthy communities are built not only through clinics or hospitals, but through the daily experiences and support systems where people live, work, and play. And access to fresh, nutritious food, reliable healthcare services, and safe housing all contribute to the overall well-being of our residents. And just as importantly, strong and trusted community institutions help connect people to the resources they need. So this collaboration brings all of these elements together. Neighborhoods in West Charlotte in particular are communities with deep history, deep culture, and resilience. Initiatives like this help ensure that every resident also has the resources and opportunities needed to live healthier and more stable lives. So I want to commend LISC, Charlotte, the CVS Health Foundation, and the local partners, Charlotte Community Services Association, Caring, who's well represented here today as well, and Deep Root CPS Farm for coming together around this shared mission to strengthen neighborhoods and expand access to care. As a county, we are so proud to support this collaboration. We look forward to seeing the positive impact it'll have across West Charlotte for families, seniors, and our community as a whole. So thank you again for your leadership, your investment, and your commitment to the West Charlotte residents. And at this time, it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce the person that represents this district on the City Council, and that is Councilman Malcolm Graham.
Good morning, everybody. So my day started early. 3 a.m. wake-up call in Washington, D.C. to catch a 6 o'clock flight to be back here in Charlotte. It's freezing cold in D.C. I only would do it for Rafine and Liz. She mentioned the word collaboration and partnership. There's no better partner that the City of Charlotte has on corridor revitalization, the work in the trenches, is Liz and Rafine Caldwell. So thank you very much for inviting me to be here to speak, and you owe me. Reverend Woods, thank you very much as well for your leadership here on the Batesville Road Corridor. Commissioner Jarrell, thank you very much for your leadership countywide. As the representative for District 2, I'm always proud to stand here on Charlotte's west side, including historic West End, because this community represents so much history, culture, strength, and tradition. But we also know that for many years, neighborhoods on the west side have not always received the same level of investment or access to resources as other parts of Charlotte. That's why efforts like the West Side Wellness Collab matters. In the city of Charlotte, we talk about building great neighborhoods, and great neighborhoods are more than housing and infrastructure. They're about making sure that residents have access to the things that allow them to live healthy, stable, and high-quality lives. When organizations like Charlotte Community Service Association, Care Ring, and Deep Roots CPS Farm come together with support from partners like Liz Charlotte and the CVS Health Foundation, we can address some of the root causes that affect health in our communities. We can address our residents' health when families have access to fresh food, when seniors receive services close to home, and when community organizations have the support they need to continue to serve residents. This initiative is an important step forward in making sure that the historic West End and communities along the Batesville Road Corridor and the broader West Side continue to thrive. I want to thank all the partners involved for making an investment in historic West End. I graduated from Smith, West End. Used to get my hair cut on the corner of Oak Lawn and Batesford Road, West End. Attend church at Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, West End. And I have the honor of representing this entire community on the Charlotte City Council. The West Side is the best side. So I look forward to seeing and championing the impact of the West Side Wellness Collab with all here today and the years ahead. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Now, the speaker of the hour, I believe, is Ed Devaney, the president of CVS Caremark. Ed, thank you very much. Come to the stage.
I saw how Dr. Wood got up the stage. I was planning to do that first. You didn't even bother with the stairs. So first and foremost, I just want to take a quick opportunity to say thank you to Dr. Wood. Is one, for welcoming us to your church. Second, for being an anchor in the community. So for those that I have not had the privilege to meet, my name is Ed Devaney. I've been with CVS Health now coming on 21 years. But equally important to me is I've been in Charlotte for 16 years. To give you some perspective, my wife and I woke up just a few years ago and said, we're Chicago people. But 2-3 years ago, we reflected back and said, Charlotte is our home. And we both stood back and said, we need to play a much more active part in this community than we have seen. And I think everyone in this audience is very familiar with CVS retail pharmacies. You see them all throughout not only the city of Charlotte, but Mecklenburg County. You might not be aware that Aetna does medical, dental, and vision, both for the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. The part of the company that I have the privilege to run, CVS Caremark, we do all pharmacy benefit management, not only for the state of North Carolina, for Mecklenburg County, but also the city of Charlotte. So this is truly an honor and a privilege to be here with some familiar faces, of which I saw some of them at the opening of Trella Uptown. So At CVS Health, we certainly know that health isn't shaped by one thing. It includes multiple factors, and we even talked about that at Trella Uptown. It's access to health care, nutritious food, affordable housing, supportive community networks, and everyday challenges that we as a community can help successfully meet. That's why we created Health Zones, to bring local organizations together and tackle these factors in a collaborative manner. Charlotte is going to be one of 6 communities across the United States that we are bringing Health Zones to. And part of that, we could not be more thrilled to announce over the next 3 years, CVS Health will be investing $2.24 million into this community, specifically the investment in the West Side Wellness Collab and Lick Charlotte. Thank you very much for all your support. This investment, we plan to expand access to coordinated care, healthy food, and chronic condition support for residents here in the historic West End, strengthening the ecosystem of trusted partners, of which are already doing incredible work. We've seen the difference this approach makes in other cities across the country, stories about people gaining stability, finding their way through their journey, not only for themselves, but the families that they have. We're excited to support these initiatives along with the other impact work that others in this community are currently focused on. This builds on CVS Health's long-standing commitment to North Carolina. You heard me talk about earlier, Trella Uptown. We could not be more proud of what we're doing on affordable housing there. To free project screenings that we are doing across the state. Think about one of the biggest access to being healthy and leading a good life is understanding what are some limitations you might have in your health care and how might we start you on your journey to better health care overall. And to the thousands of colleagues who volunteer, who are part of the Charlotte community, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you for coming out. Your attendance here means a whole lot, not only for this broader initiative, but seeing friendly faces is always a great thing. So with that said, I do have the distinct pleasure of welcoming Hiba Salih to the stage.
All right, so we are going to head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. So we brought this to you as breaking news on Live Impact News yesterday, and we got more information throughout the day. We've updated you here on WCNC Plus and through our mobile app. But that person that was found dead in West Charlotte yesterday morning, CMPD identified that victim as 24-year-old Julian Cypress Spencer. CMPD responded to a call on Bellmead Drive near the intersection with Mount Holly Road around 10:15 yesterday morning. Spencer was found in a remote area along a gravel road near railroad tracks and power lines. Again, a story that we've been following up on. Our Jesse Pierre is live for us. She's out in the field. Jesse, you got a chance to speak with Spencer's mother and also folks from a local organization.
So I did get a chance to speak to Julian Spencer's mother, Melissa. As you know, as you can imagine, for anyone who's lost a loved one, they are grieving right now. She says they hadn't spoken in several months, but, their bond was never broken. She's always taught her son to do the right thing, make the right decisions. She told me that her son was also a father of a 3-year-old little girl, that he is remembered for his energy and his smile. And, they're just kind of left with questions. She's also hurt or devastated really by knowing that he was found, I think the words she uses, inhumane, to have learned that her son was found in a remote area on a dirt road, just kind of body just left there. And that is not what she expected to get as a phone call from detectives. But she's just, looking for answers, wants to know what happened to her son and, grieving. And, once they are able to move further in the investigation and they are able to have his funeral and going away service, that is, what they're going to do to properly say goodbye. But it's a tough time for the family. I did reach out to an advocacy group, still waiting to hear back from them, to speak with them tonight. But just a tragedy, anytime you hear of someone losing their life in a violent way, they are investigating this as a homicide. It just, brings up a lot of questions, why folks are resorting to violence to resolve their issues and so forth. And, violence is obviously a concern for anyone who lives here and safety and so forth. And so there's so many questions on what happened, if this was an isolated incident and so forth. It's unclear who he was hanging out with and things like that. But his mom just, says, one day, hopefully in eternity, they'll be together.
Yeah, you said sad. Sad may be an understatement to describe this story and how that and what that mother is going through. You catch Jesse live at 5 and 6 or more on that on the story and that interview. Jesse, thank you for your time.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, let's head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. We want to go now to Alameda County, California, where happening right now, Governor Gavin Newsom is making some big announcements on expanding financial literacy for students and the wealth access for women. Let's take a listen in.
Our interventions sometimes come too late if we're going to solve for these challenges. And we've fully implemented that brand new grade at a scale no other state in the country has. In 2011, when I was asserting a similar paradigm as then mayor of San Francisco, we also were trying to make a case around the issue not just of income inequality, but wealth disparity, and focus on a novel program and strategy, which we referred to at the time K to C, kindergarten to college. It was the first established framework to actually create savings accounts, college accounts, for all kindergartners in our public school. 54,000 plus accounts have been created in that space, up to $1,000, $1,025, I think, on average now, those accounts. We remember at the time the Obama administration came out to highlight, did a press conference with us highlighting this first in the nation effort. When I committed to this job, I committed to the people of this state that we wanted to bring that to scale in California. And we did that with the legislature about 5 years ago. It's now called the Trump accounts. They're in fact not named. And we struggle as a consequence with awareness around it. But 5.5 million people now in the state of California are eligible for these career and college savings accounts, up to $1,500 in certain categories, minimum of $500 university. We also established new baby bonds in the state of California for every child born after July 1st, 2023, up to $175 just off the bat. In addition now to the opportunity to get up to $500 to $1,500 for these new Cal Kids accounts. These are things that are not happening anywhere else. When people talk about what we need to be doing next, this is what we need to be doing. Practical strategies and solutions and interventions to actually solve problems. Knitting these things together now is what this executive order is all about. And it's not even knitting together what we're framing in the beginning, but also as it relates to having a lifetime mindset as it relates to savings. And that's why we're highlighting today the work we're doing with CalSavers, which again is unique in this nation. I want to applaud the former governor and the legislature for their leadership in this space, and 7+ million people that don't have access with an employer to retirement accounts, 529s, et cetera. Opportunity then to highlight that as well, and to do what Jen and her team always do best, and that is to make sure we highlight those other persistent disparities as it relates to women and girls and access to capital, and highlighting those stubborn facts that we're not even near to where we need to be as it relates to addressing those issues, particularly at a time when everyone is running away from them. We're now leaning into them through this executive order. So that's the framework that we're knitting together. But one of the things that was missing, and Tim, I just want to thank you, was the kind of advocacy. We were talking about financial literacy for years and years and years. And be candid with you, it's tough because we talked about it. All these competing interests in terms of curriculum, I don't know, we still are trying to implement this or still trying to do that. And it took pressure from Tim and his team to create the conditions that forced the conversation anew. So I just want to thank you for doing what we struggled to do for 3 or 4, 5 or 6 years. You made it happen. Amazing. And to Judy and all the doers, not dreamers, that showed that it can be done. You know? And to this young man at scale in Fresno County, and thank you guys for just, stretching the mind and distilling a sense of well-being that we can actually get this done, so much so that Tim highlighted, they've got this guide done in record time at the Board of Education. You don't hear that at the Board of Education. And people seem reasonably pleased about it. And so now it's about moving. And we don't have to wait till 27, 28. We can move. You move. You're moving. This district, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. You're moving. Proving it can be done. And do it in a way now that no one else can lay claim. Because every one of these kids, over half these kids' parents don't have access to checking and savings. That's why there's a proliferation of payday lenders. all these, loan sharks that are out there taking advantage of folks. And they are. There's no other way to describe it. Usurious interest rates. I mean, I appreciate we're focusing on credit card interest rates, but I don't know why we're not focusing enough on what's happening all across this country in our diverse communities and the interest rates that are being legally allowed to be charged to low-income folks to simply cash a check. And so the ability now to have something that's tangible, every one of these kids now has something maybe their parents don't have. And that's their name to their account. And all of a sudden now they have an asset. And now they have a curriculum, and they're wait a second. You're talking about me. You're talking about my money. It's not intellectual anymore. It's pragmatic. It's real. It's there. It's tangible. It's my account. And I can invest, and here's the strategies for investment. And so once the mind is stretched, again, it never, goes back to its original form. And that's what this is all about. It's creating a mindset, yes, around college, sure, if that's your pathway, or career. And how you can be an investor in the economy, how you can be an owner, how you can feel you have a stake. And that's all end. Because we need to put a stake in the ground where we all have a stake in terms of our future. And that describes so much of the stress and the populism that's out there. People just don't feel they're part of it. They're not seen, they're not heard, they're not included. What's the whole point? And that's the nihilism. You start, a lot of folks just giving up, giving into the cynicism. And so this is, again, an antidote to all of that. And so forgive the long-windedness. I didn't do a soundbite here because it's not about sound bites. It's about systemic change. And this is what all of this is. I mean, we have locked this stuff in, and it's exciting, and it's happening at a scale that no other state in America can claim. And so I just want to thank everybody for this opportunity. I've been, poor Izzy and my team, they know how excited I was about this day. Finally here to be able to celebrate with all of you and to celebrate with my wife and her team their outstanding work and taking it to yet another level altogether. And with that, we might as well sign this executive order. And take some questions. Why don't we get closer? We'll sign it and then we'll. All right. You do these?
Catherine, get up.
Okay. All right. She's got a restaurant. We'll talk about that later. You guys all in here, Dee Dee? All right. Let's do a quick photo, everybody. All right. We got this done. Thank you, Jen. All right. That's all. I'm giving that to you. With that, you'll be taking questions, right? I think you guys are up first. I think we have some of you know these guys, right?
I know them.
All right, let's go. Let's see how this goes.
Good morning, Mr. Governor. So I'm Mark. I'm a junior here at San Lorenzo High School. And so my question is, out of all high schools in California, either the East Bay or up north in Sacramento, you could have went to any of their schools. But my question is, why did you decide San Lorenzo as your partner for this new class coming?
Because you got these rock star students, you got a rock star principal, you got a rock star superintendent, and then you got this, where is Beauty? There you are. This rock star leader right here has been at this for a quarter of a century. Not complicated. It's about rewarding excellence. It's about highlighting success. And I just want to say this just for you and just at your age, you're nothing but a mirror of your consistent thoughts. Whatever you focus on, you find more of. And so we're here focusing on what's right with your school and this district. And the more you focus on what's right, you start to see more of it. It becomes more abundant. And so it's really important to sort of maintain that focus and celebrate success when you can.
With the growing amount of state-mandated classes, how would you suggest schools balance these now required classes with art and elective classes.
Okay, see, we just had this long ago. That's why I was laughing. Should I let you? No, I'm gonna let you guys answer that question. We were all talking about that, and maybe the superintendent and the principal. Maybe you could talk. I mean, we had an honest conversation about that. It's a great question, and how you incorporate all that. And that's your work.
Well, what I appreciate about the governor is sometimes it takes people to push on the system in order for the system to have to evaluate itself. We've been operating on this high school model for ever since the Carnegie unit was established, I think over a century ago. And it has a certain amount of courses you need to take, and somebody determined that those courses were important. And I think it's really important for us to kind of step back as a system to say, how do we reimagine education? It used to be a lot of emphasis on, you take the English here and your social studies and math and science. The people that we need in this society that are going to be the leaders in the society are the ones that can think in a more integrated fashion, because all those subjects are going to be important when you're leading. When I became a PE major at Morehouse College, I had no idea that this would be my job. And I can tell you that it's not about thinking of these courses in isolation. It's going to be, we have to reimagine what education looks like for students in such a way that's going to make it make more sense for the students rather than thinking of courses in isolation. So that's a long way of saying nothing. But it is, I think, the solution. We really have to reimagine education in such a way that's going to make sense for the students of today. That your prime work years are going to be in the middle part of this century. And we need to make sure education evolves in order to meet the needs of today and the middle part of next century.
Governor, I'm sorry to really shift the vibe with this one, but with the news of Cesar Chavez and what has come out from Dolores Huerta claiming that she was assaulted by him, had 2 of his children, I just want to get first a sense of your reaction to all of this, and also there are calls at the local level at least for the changes in some of the landmarks that are named after him. I wonder if at the state level you might change the day that's dedicated.
Well, I appreciate the question, and it's an appropriate one. I mean, we're all absorbing. We heard some rumors as early as yesterday, a few days ago. Someone said something may be coming out, an investigation as it relates to this. And, it's March 30th, I think at the end of the month, Cesar Chavez Day. And, every year the governor of California proclaims Cesar Chavez Day. It's in statute. And how many days I've marched, how many times I've been with students, talking about the movement, and how many photographs I have in my house of Bobby Kennedy and Cesar Chavez. Woke up this morning, it was right there. And so it's been hard to absorb this. Jen and I are very close with Dolores, so many of us are, but very close. Have been for decades and decades, and none of us knew. And we were sharing all this. And so I think all of us are processing it. And just these kids have to process it now. I mean, I think there's, Brooks, I don't know, 3 dozen schools in the state are named after Cesar Chavez. I don't know, community in the country. I traveled to 14 states last few weeks. I think I was, in 14 Cesar Chavez streets in every part of this country. So we're just going to have to reflect on all of that and, reflect on a farm workers movement and a labor movement that was much bigger than one man and celebrate that. And that will be our focus as we process what the next steps are. But I also am mindful that it's one thing for me to process, for some of us, it's for young kids. This is hard. And so I hope we have some grace in that respect, is they wonder if there is a name change. Their identity to their school, to this icon that they thought one thing of, and how we process that shift. And so, this is the world we're living in, and we're for justice, we're for the truth, we're for transparency. We want to have the backs of our victims, but it's a sensitive moment.
The governor of Arizona said she won't celebrate Cesar Chavez Day. What are you going to do in California?
Yeah, as I said, I'm just processing this within hours of. Yeah, I just read the article this morning. As I say, there was never an indication all these years. Particularly having spent so many so much time with Dolores and now finding out about 2 kids. I mean, it was, just a lot to process. So, look, I think, again, it's about the movement. It's about farm workers. It's about labor. It's about social justice, economic justice, racial justice, all things that the movement has inspired, and we should all be celebrating.
And Governor, in terms of prevention, I'm curious to get your take. What does it say about the systems that have been in place here in California that this kind of alleged abuse has been allowed?
Well, it's not unique to California. I mean, this has all been highlighted in pretty, three-dimensional ways, and Epstein and all the rest. I mean, this is a broader culture. I mean, this literally goes to the heart of the work. I'm here with someone who's been at this for decades, my wife, who's been calling this out for decades, has done 7 documentaries calling out the why, the systems. What we just signed in the executive order goes to start to address those issues. It's amazing how lazy we are, that we're not getting under the hood and dealing with the real structural reasons why. It's about power. It's about dominance, aggression. It's not about empathy, care, compassion. It's not about women and girls. It's not been, it's not been the priority. Now it's all being washed away in real time. You're seeing this move by the current administration to put America in reverse on voting rights, highlighted the SAVE Act conversations, civil rights writ large, and anti-woke legislation, anti-DEI legislation. And so, all of those are just proof points of the work we have to do, but they're deeper and systemic, and they're bigger than our state. The difference is, though, in our state, we've been pushing back against a lot of those forces, but we have a lot of institutional work still to do.
Governor, you've spoken often of...
Just one second. I'll get you, Jeremy.
Would you consider changing the holiday name to reflect the movement instead of the...
Yeah, look, I would. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And look, I'm open. Obviously, these are brand new conversations. So we're having conversations in a very public way right now. But those are important conversations. I think we need to have those conversations. I think that's the right thing to do. But, we have to unpack all this and dive a little bit deeper, seek first to understand before we're understood, before we jump to the next steps. And so there's a sense of urgency on that in the context of this being, month we celebrate the life and times of a figure we've long embraced and revered. And so now we're learning more. And we have to be there for the back of the victims, and we have to make sure truth and trust is restored, and we have to make sure we're transparent and people are accountable in that context.
Governor, you've spoken often of your reverence for Bobby Kennedy. You referenced it just now. Probably Cesar Chavez's biggest political ally. I know we're still all processing this, but I'm curious for you, given that really personal connection, like how you process it in light of those connections.
Jeremy, I wasn't exaggerating. I was brushing my teeth, and there they were. To the right, yeah. That's the first photo I wake up to, black and white photo. I've talked to you, in the past. I talk about my why, standing up to ideals, striking out against injustice. So much of it is captured in the vernacular of those times, and Sarge Shriver and Bobby and Cesar, and solving even the language. I wasn't being loose in my language a moment ago. I talked in the context of this press conference about solving for ignorance, poverty, and disease. That's the language of the 60s. That's what they represented. And but there was a hard-headed pragmatism as well that defined that their work. And so, it's difficult. And as I say, it was, it is even more difficult. Just, learning more about someone I know so well.
All right, so that is Gavin Newsom there speaking regarding the expansion of financial literacy program and wealth access for women there in Alameda County, California. Let's come back out here and let's head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We want to head now to D.C., where we are hearing from Fed Chair Jerome Powell. He's speaking right now after the Federal Reserve made the decision today to hold its key interest rate steady as policymakers navigate their way through higher than expected inflation readings, mixed signs on the labor market, and the war in Iran. Let's take a listen in to Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
Recent months. In our SEP, the median projection of the unemployment rate is 4.4% at the end of this year and edges down thereafter. Inflation has eased significantly from its highs in mid-2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. Estimates based on the Consumer Price Index and other data indicate that total PCE prices rose 2.8% over the 12 months ending in February, and that excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 3.0%. These elevated readings largely reflect inflation in the goods sector, which has been boosted by the effects of tariffs. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have risen in recent weeks, likely reflecting the substantial rise in oil prices caused by the supply disruptions in the Middle East. Most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. The median projection in the SEP for total PCE inflation this year is 2.7% and 2.2% next year, a bit higher than projected in December. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 3.5% to 3.75%. From last September through December, we lowered our policy rate 0.75 percentage point, bringing it within a range of plausible estimates of neutral. This normalization of our policy stance should continue to help stabilize the labor market while allowing inflation to resume its downward trend toward 2%. But the implications of events in the Middle East for the U.S. economy are uncertain. In the near term, higher energy prices will push up overall inflation, but it is too soon to know the scope and duration of the potential effects on the economy. We will continue to monitor the risks to both sides of our mandate. We are well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments to our policy rate based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. In our SEP, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path of the federal funds rate under what each participant judges to be the most likely scenario for the economy. The median participant projects that the appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 3.4% at the end of this year and 3.1% at the end of next year, unchanged from December. As is always the case, these individual forecasts are subject to uncertainty, and they are not a committee plan or decision. Monetary policy is not on a preset course, and we'll make our decisions on a meeting-by-meeting basis. To conclude, the Fed has been assigned two goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to supporting maximum employment, bringing inflation sustainably to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We at the Fed will continue to do our jobs with objectivity, integrity, and a deep commitment to serve the American people. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Colby Smith of the New York Times. There's been some debate about whether the Fed should look through the inflation that will come from higher oil prices stemming from the Middle East conflict. Is that the right approach at this juncture? And to what extent does the fact that inflation has been above target for roughly 5 years now influence the committee's thinking around this?
So, first, let me say we're well aware of the performance of inflation over the last few years and how a series of shocks have interrupted progress that we've made over time. And that happened most recently with tariffs, and now there will be some effects on inflation coming forward. The thing that's really important that we see this year is progress on inflation through a reduction in goods inflation as the one-time effects on prices of tariffs go through the system, go through the economy. That's the main thing we're looking for going into this exercise. And we need to be seeing that to sort of understand that we actually are making progress, because on net we didn't make progress. And if you look at total core inflation, it's about 3%, and some big chunk of that, between a half and 3/4, is actually tariffs. So we're looking for progress on that. The question of whether we look through the energy inflation doesn't really arise until we have kind of checked that box. It, of course, is kind of standard learning that you look through energy shocks, but that's always been dependent on inflation expectations remaining well anchored. And I think now it's also dependent on what you mentioned, which is that broader context of 5 years now of inflation above target. We have to keep all of those things in mind, and the question of looking through when it does arise will be one to approach not lightly, but in the context that you mentioned.
And just on the SEP, can you help us make sense of why there is still a bias to cut for most officials this year, despite the upward revision to headline and core inflation and the essentially unchanged forecast for growth and unemployment? Just curious, kind of what's the genesis behind the need? What's the need for the cut?
Yeah, so there are 19 people, and so 19 reasons, 19 individual submissions. But and if you notice, the median didn't change, but there was actually some movement toward a meaningful amount of movement toward fewer cuts by people. So 4 or 5 people went from 2 to 1, let's say, 2 cuts to 1 cut, and each person has individual, stories behind what they want to do. But essentially, it is that the forecast is that we will be making progress on inflation. Not as much as we had hoped, but some progress on inflation. It should come as we start to see in the middle of the year progress on tariffs, going through once and then tariff inflation coming down. We should be seeing that. And the rate forecast is conditional on the performance of the economy. So if we don't see that progress, then you won't see the rate cut.
Howard.
Thank you. Howard Schneider with Reuters. Just to follow up a little bit and to be clear, is the higher inflation penciled in here for 2026 solely the result of the oil shock or something else?
So that's going to be part of it. But, that wouldn't be most of core, right? So the oil shock for sure shows up here. Some of that will be in core as well. But yes, but no, there's also just the feeling that we haven't seen, the progress that we had hoped for on core goods and on tariffs and on the rest of it. So for whatever reason, people did write up their inflation forecast. That will certainly be tied to events in the Middle East and the price of oil, but it's also, I think, a reflection of the slow progress we've seen on tariffs, which we believe we will see. It's just a question of how long it takes for them to get all the way through the economy, and it just takes some time.
Right. And is the lack of change in the SEPs, again, just to explicate this a little bit, more due to the expectation that the oil portion of this will pass through, or more out of concern that there is a potential blow to consumption and growth coming in the form of wealth effects with the stock market down, in the form of gas prices, diverting spending from other parts of the economy?
So I didn't get the second part of your question.
That consumers are going to be potentially diverting money to gasoline from other parts of the economy. There could be a growth shock or a redistribution of spending there that can hit consumption, wealth effects as well. I guess I'm wondering, is the rate forecast not changing because you think the oil shock is going to be temporary, or because you want to be sure you're positioned in case growth starts to slow?
So the thing I really want to emphasize is that nobody knows. The economics effect could be bigger, they could be smaller, they could be much smaller or much bigger. We just don't know. So people are writing down something that seems to make sense to them, but have no conviction. To your point, if we have if we have a long period of much higher gas prices, that's going to weigh on consumption. That'll weigh on disposable personal income, and it'll weigh on consumption. But we don't know if that's going to happen. Something quite different than that. We might have much lower than expected pass-through. So people write down, this is one of those SEPs where a number of people mentioned if we were ever going to skip an SEP, this would be a good one, because we just don't know. So I wouldn't say there's a conviction that this is going to go through quickly or not quickly. It's just you got to write something down, and this is something that is that people wrote down. And we don't debate how long. How do you do that? We wouldn't be able to debate what the length of or size of these effects would be. We just have to kind of make an individual statement. And you also, what you've written down before you'll be reluctant to move too far away from that just because you don't know. It's so unclear what the direction from this particular end will be. Meanwhile, the growth has been solid, and inflation, the overshoot is mainly from the goods and tariffs. And, the labor market is, the unemployment rate, of course, is little changed since September. You have a very, very low break-even rate, apparently, for new jobs with little growth in either demand or supply. But the U.S. economy is doing pretty well. It's just we don't know what the effects of this will be, and really no one does.
Steve.
Mr. Chair, in the past, the staff has suggested that higher oil prices, they have a hit to consumption, which Howard was talking about, but that's somewhat offset by increases to domestic production. I wonder if you could talk about that dynamic, especially to the extent that how much U.S. production is happening right now.
So the first thing is there is, the original thinking, the long-standing thinking, put it that way, is that you do look through energy shocks. But as I mentioned, that's conditioned on inflation expectations and that kind of thing. So, sorry, your question was?
What the staff is saying about, and has said in the past,
yeah.
about
So there'll be an offset.
Offsets, yeah.
So that's true. We have, we're a net exporter of energy, right? So any effects on employment and economic activity and spending would be offset to some extent by the fact that our oil companies will be more profitable and they may even do more drilling. If you ask oil companies about doing more drilling, though, they're going to want to see, a consistent rise in oil prices from where they were before the buildup for the war, and they're going to want to believe that that's going to be persistent for a fairly long time. So they're not sitting there waiting for oil to go over $70 a barrel, and then they're going to start drilling or whatever. They're going to make a reasoned, careful judgment that we're going to have higher oil prices for an extended period, meaningfully higher. So I wouldn't say there's much of that happening. Not much will be happening now, but some of that could happen over time if you see that. But so the net of the oil shock will still be some downward pressure on spending and employment, and upward pressure on inflation, of course.
And if I could just follow up on Colby's question, how much do you worry that having looked through tariff inflation and inflation running above target, and looking through the oil price shock would undermine the credibility of your commitment to the 2% target?
We have to do our analysis and think these things through carefully, but of course that's on everyone's mind. We're well aware of the history, but you don't want to overreact to that. You want to make the best judgment you can based on the facts. I don't think we're going to let it color our decision making more than is appropriate. It's more the thought that it's been 5 years, and we've actually had we had the tariff shock, we had the pandemic, and now we have an energy shock of some size and duration. We don't know what that's going to be, actually. And it's one of those things where it's a repeated set of things, and you worry that that's the kind of thing that can cause trouble for inflation expectations, and so we worry a lot about that, and we are very strongly committed to doing what it takes to keep inflation expectations anchored at 2%. And I think it's important that we do that. Very important.
Nick.
Nick Timmeros, Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, you've described monetary policy as modestly restrictive. If the unemployment rate is roughly stable, inflation moving sideways in the high twos, with an ongoing overshoot in services and non-housing services, not just goods, and the economy doing fairly well as you just outlined, what gives you confidence that inflation returns to target over the next couple of years?
Okay. So I would say the rate is, you can characterize it as in the high end of neutral, or you can characterize it as perhaps mildly restrictive, even modestly restrictive. No one knows for sure, but it's in that range where it's somewhere around the borderline between restrictive and not. Remember that a big part of the disinflation we're looking for is just the runoff of when tariffs are put into place. Of course, what they do is they raise prices to some extent, to the extent those prices the tariffs are paid by consumers on a one-time basis. And we're waiting for that process. It takes 8, 9, 10, 11 months, a year to go through the system. And we're waiting for the tariffs, which were put in place over the course of the middle part and later last year. We're waiting for that to go through the system so that goods inflation will return closer to what it's always been. I mean, it used to be, for many, many years, it was negative. And then, the year before tariffs came in, it was 0. And it's running at like 2% now. So, and so that's kind of, goods inflation is running at 2%. So that's not coming from standard Phillips curve restrictive, restrictive policy. It's coming from the runoff of a one-time thing. We also think it's important, though, to keep policy either mildly restrictive or close to that, but not too restrictive because of the weakness in the downside risk in the labor market. We are balancing these two goals in a situation where the risks to the labor market are to the downside, which would call for lower rates, and the risks to inflation are to the upside, which would call for higher rates or not cutting anyway. So we're in a difficult situation, and we feel like our framework calls on us to balance the risks. And we feel like where we are now, which is kind of on that borderline, the higher borderline of restrictive versus not restrictive, we feel like that's the right place to be.
Can I ask about core non-housing services, though? Because there are some people who think that it hasn't come down very much, if at all, over the past year. If wage growth has come down, if the labor market has loosened, why has non-housing services inflation maybe been slower to follow?
That's a good question. It's frustrating. Labor non-housing services they basically moved sideways for a year. They're at the same level, and we do expect that they will come down. But it's a bunch of idiosyncratic things. But at the same time, that is one of the things we should be seeing, because to your point, the labor market is clearly not a source of inflationary pressures, and that should really matter for non-housing services. But we're not seeing progress there. So we do, what we expect for next year is what we want to see for this year, rather, is continued progress on housing services, finally seeing that, the goods inflation come back down because the one-time effects of tariffs are through, and then also get some help from non-housing services. That's what we'd like to see. But it's a good question why we didn't see much of that last year.
Edward.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. So in December, we saw employment numbers revised down to negative 17,000. January revised down. February posted a loss of 92,000. Is the employment side a far greater risk than the inflation side? Because we are seeing inflation, CPI is close to 2%. PCE has ticked down overall.
It's really, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that that's clear at all, that one is more at risk than the other. So you can point to the unemployment rate being stable, and in a world where both supply and demand for workers have come down very, very sharply over the course of the past year due to immigration policy largely, a ratio is going to be a better thing to look at than job creation, for example. So, and the ratio is the unemployment rate, and it's been stable since September. So that tells you that. Inflation, you can. We're at 3.0% core inflation, 2.8% headline. So we've been well above the 2%, that amount, whatever it is, 0.7, 0.8, or a full percentage point above 2% for some time. And that's a concern. We need to get back down to 2%. And we need to keep focused on that, even though we do now face some new inflation from energy. So I'd be hard-pressed to say that one of them is obviously more at risk than the other.
And if I may, what happens if there's no Federal Reserve chairman confirmed on May 15th? Would you stay on?
So if my successor is not confirmed by the end of my term as chair, I would serve as chair pro tem until he is confirmed. That is what the law calls for. That's what we've done on several occasions, including involving me, and it's what we're going to do in this situation. And while I'm at it, on the question whether I will leave while the investigation is ongoing, I have no intention of leaving the board until the investigation is well and truly over, with transparency and finality, And I would refer you to the statement that was in the Fed's brief that you will all have seen, and I won't have anything more for you on that. On the question of whether I will then continue to serve as a governor after my term ends and after the investigation is over, I have not made that decision yet. And I will make that decision based on what I think is best for the institution and for the people we serve. Figuring you probably were going to set the dominoes off there, Edward. And I'm not going to have any more to say on those issues, by the way.
Thank you very much. Claire Jones from the Financial Times. People have drawn quite a few historical parallels with the current situation. We've seen oil price shocks in the past. Some people have said the first Gulf War and the Fed's response to that, where there was a focus on the growth risks, is the right parallel. To what extent would you agree with that, and to what extent do you think we're in a different place today? Thank you.
You know, it's really hard to say until we see the situation, the actual situation. In some circumstances, that might be the right case. In fact, for example, if we do see the kinds of disinflationary progress that we expect to see due to tariffs that I mentioned, I think it's hard to say, and it will depend to some extent on the size and duration of the effects we're seeing on prices, and it will depend a lot on what we can see in inflation expectations.
And just one follow-up, if I may, just on the BLS report that was mentioned briefly there. It doesn't seem from the projections or from the comments you've made today about the unemployment rate and focusing on that your view on the labour market story, to a large part being a supply-side story, has changed despite the quite negative number in February. Would that be the right take, and was there anyone else in the room who thought differently and that the February jobs report was cause for concern?
So I think you have to take the two together. You know, in a way, the January report was a positive surprise, and the February report was a negative surprise. If you put them together, you get something in the middle, and I think you have to really, as you do, I'm sure, realize there was a strike and there was weather, and that's about 80,000 of the negative effect total on the February report. Notwithstanding that, so what do you see if you take a step back overall? There are a number of indicators that suggest a degree of stability, but the thing that I think good number of people on the committee are concerned about is just the very, very low level of job creation. If you adjust what has been the trend job creation over the past, let's say, 6 months, if you adjust that for what we think, our staff thinks, is the overstatement due to overcounting, effectively there's zero net job creation in the private sector. But actually that looks like that's about what the economy needs in terms of dealing with very, very low, non-existent really, growth in the labor force, which of course we've never had in our history. So you've got a sort of a zero employment growth equilibrium. Now that's balance, okay, but I would say it does have a feel of downside risk, and it's not kind of a really comfortable balance. So, we look at that, we see it, we get it, and I mean everybody understands the arithmetic, and that's you can say the break even is zero, but nonetheless it's something we're watching carefully, and are concerned about. But ultimately, though, you can argue that it's a consequence of deliberate policy, which is really the changes to immigration. That's the biggest factor there, and but nonetheless something we watch carefully.
Andrew.
Thanks, Chair Powell. The economy's experienced a series of supply shocks in the last few years, COVID, tariffs, 2 oil price shocks. Do you think that is bad luck, or has something changed in the world that makes supply shocks more common, and does the central bank need to start taking account of the risk of supply shocks as a more common problem?
You know, we did go through a long period where the shocks were all demand shocks, and so we've had a lot of practice thinking about supply shocks in the last 4 or 5 years for sure. And it's just a very different thing, and a much more difficult thing, because it does immediately raise the question of tension between the two parts of our mandate. But has the world changed? I mean, COVID is a one-time thing, right? This energy supply shock is a one-time thing. It's not because of some broad tendency or anything, I don't think. And the oil shock with Ukraine was also a consequence of military action. So I don't know that the world has changed in a way that there'll be more supply shocks, but there's people have written that paper and that speech a number of times. A number of people have tried to make the case that is the case, and in fact, we have seen more supply shocks in the last 5 years than we've seen in many years before that. It's a fact.
Okay. You said last year that the Fed was reviewing its communication strategies, including the SEP, as part of its framework review. Whatever happened to that? And I have like 5 follow-ups to that, but I guess, what would you change about Fed communications if you had the time? Thanks.
What happened about that was not much, and I'll tell you why. So, we looked carefully at many aspects of the SEP and of our communications, and there weren't any ideas that had very broad support on the committee. And you don't want to make a change to your communications unless you have the committee behind that. So we didn't really make any changes on that. I had hoped that they had some things that I wanted to do, but they didn't attract broad support, and we'd already made all the changes we made to the framework. That was a critical thing. So we didn't. And, I wish we had been able to do some things, but we didn't. So maybe the next chair will take a look. I'm sure he will.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Television and Radio. The minutes show in January some members of the committee wanted to include a two-sided guidance on policy. Was that discussed today? And given the rise in the inflation expectations, how much support for a two-sided policy warning would there be?
So it did come up today. The policy the possibility rather that our next move might be an increase did come up at the meeting, as it did at the last meeting. The vast majority of participants don't see that as their base case, and of course we don't take things off the table. But you correctly characterized, what was in the minutes that several participants indicated, and something very much like that conversation did happen. What was your second question, though?
I was just one question there, but follow-up would be, there are a lot of goods besides oil that are trapped in the strait right now, and a lot of supply chains getting snarled. How much concern do you have about whether, if this becomes an inflation problem beyond just oil, whether there's anything you can do about it or would do about it, given the efficacies of monetary policy?
You can worry about other commodities. You can worry about all of the ways that oil-related commodities go into manufacturing and that kind of thing. The truth is, it's completely out of our hands, and we just, like everybody else, we have to just wait and see what happens, and it'll come down to how long the current situation lasts, and then what are the effects on prices, and then how do consumers react and that kind of thing. Really, I wouldn't speculate in any way, and there's really not a lot we can do other than kind of watch and see.
Maria Luisa.
Afternoon, Chair Powell. Maria Luisa Capurro with Bloomberg News. I wanted to ask you, you've said longer-term measures of inflation expectations reflect confidence that the Fed will get back to its 2% goal, but there are some colleagues of yours who have pointed to higher dispersion in household service, in business services as well. So, and that they take as a signal that inflation expectations may be less sticky than in the past. I'm wondering if there was a discussion around that at this meeting across the committee, and what were the views of what is the state of inflation expectations and the risks from higher oil and gas prices.
So at this meeting, a number of people mentioned and staff briefed on short-term expectations having moved up quite a lot for reasons we understand well. But long-term expectations, you can always find one that's troubling or some aspect of one that's troubling, but ultimately, right through this whole period, the overwhelming majority of the things we look to, including markets, including surveys of the public and also of forecasters, they've all been pretty solid on longer-term inflation expectations being right where they need to be, consistent with 2%. So that continues to be the case. We didn't have a lot of conversation about that. I think everyone does agree that we'll be watching those extremely carefully as we see the effects of the price increases come through from the conflict.
And still on how the discussion went across the committee, before coming to this meeting, there were some members who were like discussing the risks of a slowdown in growth and at a time of where inflation remains high. It really doesn't seem that most members are penciling in a slowdown in growth.
No.
But has there been any discussion of the risks of stagflation at this point?
So people actually wrote up their growth forecast by a tenth, and I think that's probably to do with just growing confidence in productivity. But sorry, and your second question was just.
If there have been any discussions about the risk of stagflation scenario.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there is tension between the two goals, right? The upward risk for inflation and downward risk for employment. So, and that puts us in a different situation. You know, when we use the term stagflation, I always have to point out that was a 1970s term at a time when unemployment was in double figures and inflation was really high and the misery index was super high. Add them together, you get the misery index. And that's not the case right now. We actually have unemployment really close to longer run normal, and we have inflation that's 1 percentage point above that. So calling that stagflation, it's not. I would reserve the term stagflation for a much more serious set of circumstances. That is not the situation we're in. What we have is some tension between the goals, and we're trying to manage our way through it. It's a very difficult situation, but it's nothing like what they faced in the 1970s, and I reserve stagflation for that, the word for that period. Maybe that's just me.
Elizabeth. Thanks so much. Elizabeth Schulze with ABC News. President Trump says that oil prices and overall inflation will go down very rapidly as soon as the war ends. Do you agree with that?
I don't have a forecast on that.
When we're thinking about the impact on American households, as you know, they've been facing these higher prices for years. They've seen an almost $1 increase in gas. How worried are you about households, especially lower income families, being able to afford those price hikes? And should people be bracing for higher costs, including for food now?
We don't know how big these effects are going to be, and I don't want to characterize them in any way. Of course, people are already seeing gas prices. Gas prices are up almost $1 a gallon. We hope that isn't for a long period of time, and of course people will feel that, but I don't want to speculate about what that might mean, because honestly that would sound like I have some idea of what's actually going to happen, and I don't think anybody really does. We're going to see how this works out, and I just would leave it at that.
Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Guido with Politico. I just wanted to ask, for purposes of the next meeting, how the Middle East war develops between now and then, how are you thinking about what might guide action at your next meeting? I mean, if we have oil prices, above $100 a barrel the entire time until the next meeting, is that going to change your wait and see stance? Like, what would lead you all to move, or are you on hold pretty indefinitely?
We'll have to wait and see. I mean, we always say we're going to learn more by the next meeting, and usually we do, but in this case we're going to learn a lot, because we're going to learn 6 weeks to the day till the next meeting, and we're going to see whether what happens is it's going to be very important for the way the economy looks and the way the outlook evolves. With what happens in the Middle East, that's going to be a big factor, and we'll know that then. I don't know how it's going to affect our thinking. I really don't. And we did talk about alternative scenarios a little bit, but it's just, I wouldn't bring that in here. It's very uncertain, and I just want to remember that we don't know, and we shouldn't assume it's going to be one thing or another. We're going to see.
So is it a matter of you don't know how the situation itself is going to evolve, or even if things remain as they are, the economy could still remain relatively durable in face of them?
Yeah, that's true too. No, I mean, the U.S. economy has just, made it's been strong through a whole bunch of challenges. I mean, if you go back to 2023, when we raised rates a lot in 22 and 23, and close to 100% of economists called for a recession, which didn't happen. In fact, 2023 was a really strong year. So the U.S. economy has really been just doing pretty well through a lot of significant challenges over the past few years. It's been amazing to see. And I don't know what's going to happen in the next intermeeting cycle, and I don't know what's going to happen in the Middle East. I wouldn't want to speculate.
Hi, Chair Powell. Thanks for taking our questions. What makes you so certain that tariff-related price increases will be a one-time effect? I don't think we've seen you since the Supreme Court tariff decision, and it's pretty clear that none of us know what the extent of the tariff shock will be as the administration moves to replace some of the tariffs that were overturned. So I suppose I'm curious, what would make you question this certainty that tariffs are going to be a one-time price effect?
Well, I would not at all use the word certain about my views on that. I'm not certain. I'm uncertain. But just if you think about what it is, it's a one-time increase in the price of a good, right? And what inflation is ongoing increases in prices this year, next year, the year after. That's what inflation is. It's not a one-time price increase. There's a very, very big difference. The public doesn't really focus on that, but that's the difference. And tariffs should be in theory, unless they cause people to start expecting still more tariffs the next year and still more tariffs the next year, they should be a classic one-time thing. People say the same thing traditionally about an energy price spike, because traditionally prices go up and they come back down. And by the time monetary policy would react, it would be over. So I don't have tons of confidence on that. I think that the theory is probably right, but as usual, the time it takes to get all the way through the economy is just very uncertain. And we found that coming out of COVID, that the inflation did go away, and largely for the reasons we thought it would, but it took 2 years longer than we thought. So I think we have to be humble about knowing how long it will take for tariffs to go all the way through the economy. And so what we've been doing is, our staff's been doing, it's very interesting. They started off with just an estimate because there wasn't a real history, and then they've built, based on the history that they're seeing of tariffs coming through into prices, they can now.
All right, folks, we're going to pivot away from this briefing with the Fed Reserve Chair, and we're going to turn to a brand new feed here. This is coming to us out of the Miami area. We're seeing 4 people being charged with the drug overdose death of a music festival visitor. And so we're going to see officials here making that announcement. We'll listen in right now.
Y si alguien muere por los medicamentos que proporcionas, te haremos responsable. Ahora el jefe quiere decir algunas palabras. Ok, gracias.
Mi nombre es Manuel Morales, yo soy el jefe de la policía de la ciudad de Miami. La estatal fiscal hizo tremendo trabajo en poner las líneas de los datos que llevaron a la trágica muerte de Jenny. Lo que estoy aquí para decir es que por esto es que el sur de la Florida es tan especial. La colaboración que tenemos entre la
All right, folks, and obviously we've reached the Spanish language portion of this briefing. We've got another feed. We're seeing Senate floor right now pretty active with some commentary. We're going to pivot to that and listen in.
Vote as a non-citizen, it's up to another 1 year in prison. Nobody is going to risk going to prison for 6 years in order to cast a vote in an election. I mean, that defies common sense, and it also defies the fact, which is why Republicans can't come up with any proof to support their claim, which they argue justifies this bill. None. Again, the Speaker says it's an intuition. In other words, it's a feeling he's got. But there's no proof to support it, because there isn't any. So that is the false claim being made to justify this bill. In other words, it's a bill in search of a problem, but actually the problem doesn't exist, so it's obviously in search of something else. And that something else is making it harder for millions of Americans to vote. As I mentioned, Donald Trump thinks if this bill is passed, it will, quote, guarantee Republicans the midterm. former Secretary of Homeland Security says we need this bill to get the right voters to vote for the, quote, right leaders. I was just listening to one of my Republican colleagues on the floor talk about how we need ID for all sorts of things, and of course that's true. You need a license to drive a car. But guess what? That license that you get, that's not proof of citizenship. That doesn't qualify under this bill. Even the new real IDs don't qualify for proof of citizenship under this bill because there are non-citizens who have those forms of ID. So when Republican senators talk about how these other forms of ID that we use every day, suggesting that they could be used for this purpose, that's just not true. What this bill does is essentially narrow the forms of ID that you need to prove that you're a citizen in the first place to essentially two categories. One is a passport. Now, it turns out that only about half of Americans have a passport. So that means half of the American citizens that are preparing to go out and vote will not be able to vote because they wouldn't have the proof of citizenship. They don't have the passport. Or it's an original birth certificate. Well, I think we all know that there are lots of Americans that don't have their original birth certificate. In fact, if you're a woman who's gotten married and changed her name, that original birth certificate won't provide you the proof of citizenship required under this law. And research at the Brennan Center at the University of Maryland shows that more than 21 million American citizens do not have these required documents readily available. 21 million American citizens who will be forced to go through all these additional hoops and, by the way, pay money in order to get the required ID. And of course, in America, we're not supposed to have a poll tax. You're not supposed to have to pay the government any money for the right to exercise your right to vote. But that's what this bill does for maybe up to 21 million of our fellow American citizens. So if there really were like proof of an epidemic of non-citizen voting, of course we would need to look for ways to prevent that from happening. We would have to come up with some form of required ID to meet that problem. But there is no proof there. There is no there. Now, one of the ways that the Trump administration proposed trying to get to the bottom of all this claim fraud was to require states to send the Department of Homeland Security their voting information. In fact, the Department of Justice has been asking a lot of states for this information. You may recall that Attorney General Bondi and former Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem were telling people in Minnesota, you know, we'll call back ICE and their lawless efforts if you give us your voter ID information. And of course, in our country, we have state-based elections. Thank goodness. Thank goodness we count our elections the state level. Can you imagine if we did what Donald Trump wants to do, which is federalize the elections and like count them at the White House? I mean, you remember in 2020, after he lost, the President of the United States was calling down to Georgia, Fulton County, and saying, find me, what was it, 6,000 some votes? Thank goodness we don't have centralized federal elections in the United States of America, because you can be sure that President Trump would make sure when he conducted the count at the White House, it would come out his way. So we don't have that, but we now have a Department of Homeland Security who is essentially demanding that states provide the federal government with their voter information. And a lot of states are suing, they're fighting back. Some states have been providing that information to the Department of Justice and to other entities. But it turns out that when the states hear back from the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Homeland Security is giving them all sorts of misinformation. Let's look at a couple examples of states that have already shared their voter roll data with DHS. And this was, again, for the purpose of DHS checking to make sure that voter rolls in those states did not include non-citizens. So DHS was going to scrub those records and let the states know what kind of problems they have. Well, Missouri's records were reviewed by DHS, and turns out DHS found hundreds of voters that DHS said were ineligible to vote. Guess what? It turned out that DHS was wrong. They were eligible voters. So DHS was essentially telling the state of Missouri that eligible American citizen voters, in fact, were not eligible. As one county clerk in Missouri said of the DHS system, quote, "This is not ready for prime time, and I'm not going to risk the security and constitutional rights of my voters for a bad idea," unquote. That's a clerk in the state of Missouri. An election administrator in Texas said, and I quote, "I really find no merit in any of this," unquote. That was after 3 eligible Texas voters, in other words, eligible American citizen Texas voters, had been flagged for removal by DHS. So here's the state of Texas. Okay, DHS, take a look at our voter files, and you find all those people that are really not American citizens. Well, guess what? They didn't get any back that flagged people who were not American citizens. They did get back people that DHS claimed were not eligible, but when Texas inspected it, turns out they were eligible to vote.
All right, folks, we'll take a break here on Live Impact News. We'll be back in 2 minutes with more from our feeds that we're seeing around the nation. All right, folks, welcome back to Live Impact News. We're checking in now with an earlier briefing from Vice President J.D. Vance, making an appearance at a manufacturing facility in Auburn Hills, Michigan. Let's listen in.
It's my heart to say it. The biggest dividing line in our politics is not tax policy or regulatory policy or even immigration, as much as you and I care about all these things. The biggest dividing line in our country is that we have in Washington, D.C., one political movement that is dedicated to fraud, to illegal immigration, and to making sure that this country is safe for them rather than safe for us. I really would. I would love to live in a country where when the President of the United States says it is the duty of the American government to look after American citizens first, for everybody, Democrat and Republican, to stand up and cheer. But my simple request is that until we get to that moment, until the Democrats can cheer for the idea that the government fights for you, until the Democrats can cheer for the fact that the government should be lowering your taxes, until the Democrats stand and cheer for the fact that the border ought to be closed and we ought to get the cartels out of our country, do not send those crazy people or any more of them to Washington, D.C. Support the people who fight for you, and that is Donald J. Trump and the entire leadership of this party. Okay, so I've said everything, or at least most of what I want to say here, but I want to just give I want to give one note of shout out to our fellow Americans in this community who've suffered a little bit in the last couple of weeks, and then I'll take some questions from the reporters. So I believe we're only about a half an hour or so away from the facility, Temple Israel, the synagogue that was attacked by a terrorist just, well, not even a week ago, I believe. And I think that all of us ought to keep these folks in our prayers, because when something happens to any member of our American family, and this particular incident happened to Jewish members of our American family, it is something that all of us have to stand up and say, it's disgusting, it's unacceptable, and we're not going to tolerate the United States of America. So I hope all the folks from Temple Israel know that we're praying for them, we're thinking about them, from the President of the United States, the Vice President, and everybody else. We love you, and we're proud of how you've handled this particular situation, because it is tough. In particular, there was a police veteran who was a security guard by the name of Danny Phillips. And Danny Phillips was one of the heroes that day. He was injured protecting the people in that community. And I hope all of us will give a big round of applause and a prayer to Danny Phillips. He's the very best of this country. And sometimes you see the very best on our worst days. So with that, I will say thank you all for having me. The fun is not over yet. We'll take a few questions from the reporters, but if we could, what I'd like to do is start out with the local reporters first, and if we have time, we'll get to the national reporters after that. Okay, go ahead, guys.
Hi, Mr. Vice President. Brett Cass with WXYZ here in Detroit. Thank you for taking questions. We're seeing gas prices here climbing at home, in particular here in Metro Detroit, with what's going on with Iran and the impacts in the Strait of Hormuz. What is the administration doing to help keep gas prices down, and where do you see gas prices going here in the near future?
Well, the President of the United States has been crystal clear about this. Look, gas prices are up. And we know they're up, and we know that people are hurting because of it, and we're doing everything that we can to ensure that they stay lower. I will say, the President said this, and I certainly agree with it, this is a temporary blip. Okay, what happened under the Biden administration is the gas prices were high for 4 years. Gas prices are higher right now, and frankly, they're not even as high as they were during certain parts of the Biden administration because of what's going on in the Middle East. It's not going to last forever. We're going to take care of business. We're going to come back home, and when that happens, you're going to see energy prices come back down to reality. But in the meantime, we got a problem. We know that we have a problem. We're doing everything that we can to address it. A couple of steps that we've taken just in the last couple of weeks is that we actually worked with a lot of our allies all over the world who are suffering from this, frankly, more than we are, because unlike the United States, where we pursued an energy dominance agenda, you've got a lot of people all over the world who have focused on a lot of green energy scams, and they're hurting a lot more than we are. So as much as we got to focus on getting these gas prices down, the reality is overseas they're feeling it far worse than we did because we've taken the steps to protect our energy economy. So for example, what we did working with these allies is we released hundreds of millions of barrels out of all these petroleum reserves so that we could put some downward pressure on prices. We're working on a number of things. In fact, a couple of things that I think will be announced in just the next 24 to 48 hours. I don't want to get ahead of the president on that, but we recognize this is an issue. We are fighting against it, and we promise that when this conflict draws to a close, when this operation draws to a close, we're going to see those energy prices come back down to reality because that's what the president promised to do. He delivered an energy-dominant agenda. It's made us much more secure in the face of these things. But yeah, we got a rough road ahead of us for the next few weeks, but it's temporary. Next question.
Hi, Remington Hernandez, News Channel 3 in Kalamazoo. The Gordie Howe Bridge is not too far from here. President Trump has made some comments about trade with Canada. For manufacturers here in Michigan, that bridge will be a lifeline to get products over the border. Do you think that the president has taken the right steps with Canada in regards to the bridge, and do you think that it should open on time?
Well, the president's attitude to Canada is they are an important ally. They're an important trading partner, especially for folks in this region of our country. But Canada has taken advantage of the United States of America for far too long. And they've taken advantage of the United States in a couple of different ways. Number one, they have allowed us to subsidize their entire military, their entire security. Canada pays virtually nothing, at least until a couple of years ago, for their own security, which means we had to foot the bill for that security. Is that fair to you and your kids that you have to pay for the military of a foreign country? No. So the President of the United States said to the Canadians, number one, you guys got to take your own security more seriously. You're always going to be an ally, but why don't you have a little bit more self-sufficiency? And I think that makes complete and total sense. The second thing the President said is, if we're going to be true friends, you have to treat our workers as fairly as we've treated Canadian workers for 40 years. Again, we have let so many people over the entire time that I've been alive take advantage of the United States of America. The president said, if you're going to apply a tariff to our goods, we're going to start applying a tariff to your goods too. It's basic fairness. And that's what we've done, and our hope with Canada, and I think we'll get there eventually, is we're going to get to a point where Canada treats our workers fairly, we treat their workers fairly, and they're going to be a true ally and a true friend, not somebody who's taken advantage of us, which is what they've done for most of my life. Thank you. Next question.
Will Jones from Local 4. With the ongoing war with Iran and the recent attack that you just mentioned on a synagogue not too far from here, what is being done to keep Americans safe here at home?
Yeah, a very good question. I believe that Tulsi Gabbard and John Ratcliffe are actually testifying before Congress right now to talk about some of these issues. So let me just say that it is an obsessive focus of the entire U.S. government to understand where the threats are, where people might attack innocent Americans, and what we can do to address it, to get ahead of it, and if, God forbid, something does happen, to respond to it as quickly as possible. And there's a whole host of things that happen. Look, we're monitoring, some classified stuff, some phone calls, things like that, so that we can try to figure out when foreign actors want to come into our country to commit acts of terrorism in the United States of America. We've got the FBI searching for people who have come in, usually illegally, to the United States of America, who might wish the United States ill will. We're continuing to get illegal criminals out of our country because those are very often the people who commit acts of violence against the United States of America, against our people. So there's a lot that we're working on. Knock on wood, I think that we've had a very good track record with security under the Trump administration. We've got murder rates as low as they've ever been. But the only way to stay ahead of this stuff is to keep vigilant about it. The unfortunate reality is there are always bad people out there. Again, very many of them outside of our country who are trying to come in. They're always going to be there. What you need your government to do, what you should expect your government to do, is to stay on top of it and keep you as safe as possible. That's what we try to do every single day. Thank you.
Colin Jackson, Michigan Public Radio Network. We're seeing ICE expanding its presence in Southeast Michigan with developments in near the airport of Romulus and office spaces in Southfield. And I'm wondering what words you would have to say to community members who may be concerned that this might lead to an increase in aggressive immigration tactics like we've seen in Minnesota or Chicago.
Well, what I'd say is that ICE is a very simple job, and it's not just ICE, it's the entire federal government. Law enforcement agencies, the various, three-letter agencies that exist within the federal government, it's to make people safe. And ICE in particular is trying to get violent criminals out of the United States of America. People who have no legal right to be in the United States of America, the best thing they could do is just go home voluntarily. That would be the easiest thing. And I always find it a little bit weird when congressional Democrats or others say, how dare you, and then the thing that they're so offended by is that we're getting illegal aliens, many of them with criminal records, out of our country. How dare we? That's exactly what we should be doing. That's what we promised we would do when the American people elected Donald J. Trump president of the United States, to protect the American people. You heard the last questioner, asking justifiably about how we're keeping people safe. One of the ways that we keep people safe is by making sure bad people are outside of our country rather than inside of our country. And if they're inside of our country, inside of a jail cell, which is where they should be. But on this issue of, they're worried about, I forget how you phrased the question, you said they're worried about aggressive enforcement. We have had ICE and immigration enforcement operating in 50 states, in red states and in blue states, in very, very blue cities and very, very red cities, without any incident. And the two exceptions, maybe three exceptions, are where? Minneapolis, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Because in those three states, the local political leadership said, do not cooperate with getting violent criminals out of our state, or out of our city. Now, I don't understand that. If I'm living in suburban Minneapolis and I find out there's a sex offender, illegal alien living 3 blocks away from me, I would be calling the police and saying, get this person out of my country. But unfortunately, you've had some governors and a couple of mayors who have said they're going to do everything possible to create civil strife by blocking immigration enforcement. What I would ask people in town to do, what I'd ask everybody in these communities to do, is just tell your local leadership that you want them to cooperate with getting bad people out of the United States of America. So long as we've got the cooperation and so long as we're working as a team, the chaos that you see in Minneapolis, it's not going to happen. It only happens when you've got broken and dysfunctional political leadership that tries to stop us from doing our jobs.
Thank you for taking questions, Mr. Vice President. Craig Mauger from the Detroit News newspaper here. There's a lot of concern and talk in Michigan right now ahead of this pivotal midterm election that the federal government might somehow intervene in the administration of the election here in this state. Do you have any promises that you would make that the federal government will not intervene in any way in this election, or what would you tell people in Michigan who are concerned about that?
Well, what do you mean by the federal government intervening in the election? That's the first I've ever heard of it, but maybe I don't understand your question.
I believe the president has talked about nationalizing elections in recent months himself. State.
Well, if what you mean by intervening in the election is that we want everybody to have a voter ID before voting in this country, yes, we should be doing that, to be clear. If by what you mean is, Marco Rubio has like 5 jobs, is the president going to send Marco Rubio to Michigan to be a ballot counter as his 6th title? I don't think so. I haven't talked to the president or Marco about it, but look, there's a lot of scare tactics, and there's a lot of scary language floating around there. The president and I have been working very hard. We actually got a good vote yesterday in the United States Senate on the Save America Act, which is a very simple piece of legislation that does a number of things, but one of the things it does is actually establish this very simple principle that if you're going to vote in a federal election, you ought to show identification before you do so. I think that's very much common sense. So no, we don't want to intervene in elections, but we certainly want to make elections safe and secure. Number one, because we want to make sure that the will of the voters is actually recognized and respected. But think about this. You know, we've got, I don't know how many people, a lot of people in this room. Let's say for every single person here, an illegal alien shows up and votes in a Michigan election. That isn't just fraudulent, and that isn't just illegal, that steals your right to vote away from you, because then your vote counts for less. If you believe, as I do, that the American people are sovereign in their own country, then you have to believe that their vote should be protected, and the only way to fully protect their vote is to prevent fraudsters from coming and voting in American elections. And we'll take just one more question.
Hello, Mr. Vice President. Ben Solis, Michigan Advance. Joe Kent resigned from his post over his objection to the war in Iran. He was among those Republicans who was pretty dedicated to Trump's agenda and the MAGA movement. So how does his exit speak to the fracture of that coalition over the war? And what can you say to those who deeply believe in the president's agenda but are really worried about the consequences of what the war in Iran holds?
Well, look, I mean, the president has said this, I've said this, nobody likes war, right? And I guarantee the president of the United States is not interested in getting us, you know, in the kind of long-term quagmires that we've seen in years past. I know the president, I know the way that he thinks about America's national security. That is not a risk with this president at all. What he has also said consistently for 10, 15 years, maybe even longer, is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and he's willing to take action, diplomatic, ideally, but military action if he has to make sure that that doesn't happen. That's all this is about. We don't want the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon. The president's been clear about this, and that's what led to the president's decision of, about 3 weeks ago. Now, you asked about Joe Kent. Now, I know Joe Kent a little bit. I like Joe Kent. You heard the President of the United States say yesterday that he likes Joe Kent, too. But it's one thing to have a disagreement of opinion. I know the president very well. He welcomes differences of opinion. He likes it when people express their views about what should happen. He listens to everybody. It's one of the great things I like about him is that whether you're the gardener at Mar-a-Lago or whether you're the Secretary of the State, the president cares about what you think about an issue. He recognizes that everybody has smarts and everybody has wisdom. That said, whatever your view is, when the President of the United States makes a decision, it's your job to help make that decision as effective and successful as possible. And so the President said this yesterday, if you are on the team and you can't help implement the decisions of his administration, he has the right to make those decisions, then it's a good thing for you to resign, and I think that's exactly right. It's fine to disagree, but once the president makes a decision, it's up to everybody who serves in his administration to make it as successful as possible. That's how I do my job, and I think that's how everybody in the administration should do their job too. So let me just say this on a closing note here. You know, we're here in the great state of Michigan. I'll head back to D.C. this evening. But I just want to say that I know that you guys are the people who actually make this country run. You know, a very formative moment for me, just for a lot of reasons, in part because all of our leaders went completely insane, was the COVID pandemic. And remember how they shut everything down? And I kept thinking to myself that I knew a lot of people who worked in manufacturing. I knew a lot of people who continued to go to work because they didn't have any other choice. And frankly, while the United States of America would do just fine with a few fewer people on Wall Street on Microsoft Excel, America doesn't do fine at all if our manufacturers and the people who build and make things don't show up for work and make sure that America has the stuff that it needs. So one of the ways that we think about our administration, one of the ways that we think about our goal is that we serve you. You fought for us for long enough. We have to fight for you. You've done your job for the United States of America, and you're going to keep on doing it. It's time to have a government that works for you. Now, I mentioned this earlier. For my entire life, the story of my hometown was another factory closed. Another place that provided good jobs to the moms and dads of my friends was going overseas. Another family that faced financial stress because mom or dad lost a job was getting divorced because of the financial pressures created by stupid policies coming out of Washington, D.C. And I just want you to know, I said this the first time I ever spoke as the vice presidential nominee, and I'll repeat it right now, I will never forget where I came from. Part of what we're trying to do, the biggest part of what we're trying to do, is stop the bleeding and reverse it to where factories were closing down for my entire life. Now factories are being built back up. Where engine manufacturers were shutting down shifts, now they're adding shifts. Where people are hiring instead of firing our great American workers. That is what we're trying to do in the Trump administration, and 14 months in, I think that we've got a lot to be proud of and a lot to build on and a lot to keep working at. But I just want you to know, thank you, but I just want you to know that no matter what you see come out of Washington from the crazy radicals, no matter what the media reports on and tells you, the President of the United States sends this message and the Vice President of the United States agrees with it wholeheartedly. You are the beating heart of the United States of America, and the Trump administration will never stop fighting for you every single day. God bless you all, and thank you for having me.
All right, folks, we're going to take a break here. We'll be back in 2 minutes with more Live Impact News. All right, folks, welcome back to Live Impact News. We're going to get a check of the forecast. It's a really delightful day, although on the chilly side, but the sunshine is abundant. Let's see how things develop. We will say it's going to get pretty warm soon, so let's listen in.
Another gorgeous day today across the Carolinas, but boy, it is cold out there. Hey, I'm meteorologist Majestic Storm. Not even a single cloud in the sky as we're looking towards Lake Norman. It was cold this morning with a mix of upper 20s, low to mid 30s. And now as we're heading into the afternoon, bottom line, we're just not warming up a whole lot, with the daytime highs only climbing really into the upper 40s today. Good news tomorrow, we're back into the low 60s. And if you like warmer weather, you will love this weekend's weather forecast. We're talking about 80-degree temperatures. Now, the normal for this time of the year, it's 65 degrees, and today we're pretty far away from that. 49 is where we'll top off this afternoon, and we started out the day with picture-perfect blue sunny skies. Many of us still seeing that this afternoon, but I'd say after dinner time and overnight tonight, you'll start to notice a little bit more cloud coverage push across the Carolinas. In the mountains, it's been a really pretty day. Temperatures also chill chilly though. 38 degrees there in Banner Elk and Blowing Rock, 40 degrees there in Boone. We're nice and dry across the foothills today with plenty of sunshine from Taylorsville to Hickory, 48 degrees there and 49 in Maiden. Looking across the Queen City, 49 will be our high this afternoon, much of the same back towards Gastonia. And if you want to do any errands, you want to do something outside, you may just want to keep the coat handy because again, temperatures were cold this morning and we're not warming up a whole lot even as we head on into the later half of the day. 52 degrees there in Chesterfield. Satellite and radar looks like this across the Carolinas. Not much to worry about. It's going to be a quiet day overall. Little cloud coverage filtering in as we head towards the later half of our Tuesday or our Wednesday, but as we're heading into the next several days, you'll see those rain chances are going to stay dry. We don't have rain chances until next week. So instead of rain, the big weather story is we get sunshine, we have warmer temperatures, and eventually it's going to feel like spring just in time for the very first day of spring. Let's take you into our futurecast. Here's 9 o'clock tonight. I wanted to pause it here because at this point we have a lot of cloud coverage out there. Increasing clouds, and then temperatures tomorrow morning will start out mainly into the 30s, and you can see much of the same. Overall, just a nice mix of sun and clouds for our Thursday afternoon with those southwesterly winds starting to pick up. A little bit breezy with some of those winds gusting up to around 25 miles an hour, but thankfully it's moving in from the southwest. That's why those temperatures will be warm into the mid-60s. Friday morning, beautiful blue sunny skies, 30s and low 40s heading out the door, and then there you go, those 70-degree temperatures. I think Friday is going to be absolutely perfect. Getting even warmer Saturday and Sunday with those 80s returning. Starting to see those temperatures drop by Tuesday though with mid-50s. Again, tomorrow morning will be our last cold morning, and then as we're wrapping up the work week and heading into the weekend, those overnight lows will become a little bit more steady. There's that jet stream indicating that push to the north will allow warmer air to filter in just in time for Friday. Remember, Friday, sunny skies with temperatures into the 70s. Makes sense because Friday is going to be the first day of spring, officially starting at 10:46. Weekend weather forecast looks like this. Isn't that nice? Low 80-degree temperatures on Saturday, and you can see right here in our Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast that this is our overall trend, getting warmer each day, and each day we're dry with a good mix of sun and clouds. Friday, absolutely stunning for the first day of spring with 73-degree temperatures for our highs, and then Monday, almost 90 degrees. Early next week, a little bit more cloud coverage, some rain chances returning, but I think by Tuesday you'll feel that difference with those mid-50s. Hope you have a great day.
All right, there you have it, folks. We'll take another break here. We'll be back in 2 minutes with more Live Impact News. All right, back here in the Live Impact News studio, we're turning now to an announcement today from CMPD. Apparently, Quick Trip is making a huge donation to the CMPD Foundation. So we're seeing about $500,000 on the way to help police with tools and wellness and mental health. Let's listen into that announcement on how that money will be used.
Before we get started, we have a couple of guest speakers. I'll go ahead and give you their names and give you the spelling for their names. First one is Nick Gracek with Quick Trip, Gracek. And our second one is Katrina Collins, Katrina Collins. And of course, Chief Estella D. Patterson will speak as well. Well, good afternoon. My name is Brad Koch, and I serve as the patrol major over the Northeast Service Area and work closely with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Foundation. Thank you all for being here today. We appreciate your time and your commitment to supporting public safety in the city of Charlotte. This is an important moment for our department and for our community, and we're grateful to share it with all of you. We're especially thankful for the strong partnerships that help us move our mission forward, and today's announcement reflects just how powerful those partnerships can be. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Nick Gracek, Division Sales Manager with Quick Trip, whose leadership and generosity have played a key role in making today's contribution possible. Nick, thank you for being here today. Thank you for your continued support of CMPD and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Foundation. Nick.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here with you guys today. See, he's already introduced me. My name is Nick Gracek, and I'm here on the behalf of our 550 Quick Trip employees who work in our 21 stores here in Charlotte. I'd like to thank everyone for being here today, especially Chief Patterson and all the brave men and women of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. At Quick Trip, the safety of our employees and our customers is our highest priority. We're incredibly grateful for the officers who put their lives on the line every day to protect our community, and we're committed to supporting them with the resources they need to do their job, go home safe to their families, and come back and do it all over again. Today, we're proud to announce a $500,000 donation from Quick Trip to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Foundation. Since Quick Trip was founded in 1958, we've invested 5% of our net profits back into the communities we serve. The contribution to the Police Foundation will help our officers leverage new ways to keep Charlotte.
All right, and we'll have more from this announcement in just a bit. We'll take a quick break back in two with the rest of that announcement. All right, folks, welcome back to Live Impact News. We're heading back to the Senate floor. We've got Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock making an address of sorts. Let's listen in.
Pay because of Washington dysfunction. Here's what I believe. I believe that if you are working, particularly during a government shutdown, then you should be fully paid. I believe this so much that I've broken with members of my own party to vote to pay all federal workers, which includes TSA officers, during government shutdowns. I think it's simply wrong for my Republican colleagues to use these hardworking Americans as leverage, as pawns, in what they are presenting as a false choice to the American people. Here's the choice that they're presenting to us. They're saying to us, either shut down the government, denying working people the money that they have earned, or vote to continue to support the president's paramilitary force that is wreaking havoc in our streets and killing ordinary citizens for exercising their First Amendment rights. That's a false choice, one I simply cannot accept, and it confounds common sense. The time is always right, Dr. King used to say, to do what's right. And so I'm calling on this chamber to pay TSA workers right now before we again all head to the airports.
All right, folks, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Impact News. Our time is coming to a close in just moments. Of course, we've got the news at 4, just moments away. I'll see you again for Live Impact at 7 p.m.